out of my mind. But that's alright with me, 'cause you see I'm doing fine. I may be a dreamer, some call me a fool, but that's alright, 'cause I got you. There was a washout yesterday too, but all that's okay with me, 'cause it rinsed away my blues. Maybe a dreamer, some call me a fool, that's alright, 'cause I got you. Tell them to save their breath, you ain't no friend of mine. I may be a dreamer, some call me a fool, but that's alright, 'cause I got you. I may be a dreamer, some call me a fool, but that's alright. Well, that's alright. That's alright, 'cause I got you. Alright, the early birds. We got the early birds in here. Welcome, welcome to Club Helsinki. Welcome to the information session. All these things about handguns and stuff. I'm Foggy Otis. I'm going to sing a couple more songs while you all get settled.
What am I doing? Someday I'll win and then I'll regret having to throw the book behind me. These seats are...
Red leather, yellow leather, take it from the top.
Yes,
Way to see the sky. We stop not the man who gives up, gives mud in your eye. Thank you, that's great, we'll be in touch. It's always the same. A wise man would have hung it all up, but this fool's in love with the game. Well, I've never been one who's been lucky in love, but I'm happy to say that's all changed. 'Cause there's never a dull moment since you came into my life like a dream. Never a dull moment since you floated across my screen. 'Cause there's never a dull moment since you came into my life like a dream. Never a dull moment since you floated across my screen. Like that cat with a hand-drawn headshot, I stood barely a chance. Camera lady zooming real tight, watch this wallflower dance. 'Cause there's never a dull moment since you came into my life like a dream.
I want a big diet.
Never a dull moment since you floated across my screen. friend, hanging on as if the party never ends. When you tumble down, nothing seems the same. No one even wants to know your name. Well, that's quite alright, my fair weather friend, 'cause I don't need you here no more. I'm fine by myself, my heart on the shelf, and I know it's gonna crash down on the floor. Well, that's a chance I take every single day when I step foot out my front door. whole world is red, hanging on as if the party never ends.
Well, if you're going to ask us to sign a petition, we've already signed. We're not necessarily saying we signed for Brian, but we signed the petition. Right. He's been out at the farmers.
We did, but he's
Somebody outside.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Very obviously.
Windows are revealing, but it's all turning round. My head is reeling, my heart has lost all feeling, but it's all turning round. Bells are ringing, choir singing, and it's all turning round. The sun's not shining, but the clouds have a silver lining, and it's all turning round. Smiling faces, happy places, 'cause it's all turning round. Blue skies above me, someone to love me, 'cause it's all turning round. Yes, it's all turning round. Well, it's all turning round. Hey, how are you guys? Didn't see you in there. You guys ready to start? All right. Thank you for coming out. Your speakers are going to be speaking any minute now. While you're here, Kevin's your bartender. We have Emily and Brenda out there waiting on some tables. We got Mike up running the controls. So let's give it up for those people and get ready for a great program.
That's Maggie Otis with the Hudson Dusters. They've been very good to us. A lot of people have been very good to us. I'm told. You're everywhere. That's what they tell me. So welcome and thank you, everybody. A lot of people to thank for pulling this event together. Obviously, all the speakers, our candidates are here. All the people working at Helsinki. Cameron Melville, who's been incredibly generous with our group. I could not make it tonight. We love him and we want to thank him. And so many others. So, and our team, who's here? Me, Zach. Where are you? There's Zach. Zach Smith, he's the brains of the operation. Let's see who's back there. Juan and Harry are doing voter reg. So it's a big push for voter reg tonight, and Harry is rabid about that, so please placate him. If you're not registered, do. And who else have we got here tonight? Oh, Bernadette.
Yeah.
Say hi, Bernadette. And Gil. So we couldn't do this. We're tiny but mighty. Let's see. I'm both glad and saddened to see the support for this movement in the country. And unfortunately, it took the latest massacres to bring this kind of attention, time and attention and effort to this critical issue. And fundamentally, I think we need to ask ourselves, how did we get here? I mean, not to sound too much like a Talking Heads song, but it's true. We can't afford a $250 tax deduction for school supplies, but then there actually is a national conversation about giving every single teacher and admin person a Glock. Well, you can laugh, but that's actually what they talked about, and I believe they passed something to that effect in one of the houses in Florida. So it's ridiculous, and we need to take this country back. And the time is now. I believe Parkland was a tipping point, and these ferocious kids, unbelievable. They're talking millions of people in the streets today. There were 800 marches across this country today. It's time for us to help them take our country back. We need to be very proud of these kids and support them in any way we possibly can. And also, let's not underestimate them. They feel like they are being underestimated and they're also being attacked. But let's remember, it was kids that ended the Vietnam War. And we got voting rights in this country for people who had previously been disenfranchised. So, I mean, it's possible. And there was really a very funny Trevor Noah piece. These kids are from, it was actually called the safest city in Florida, Parkland, and they're upper middle class. And he said, what's the difference here? The difference is they want to talk to the manager, right? They're like, no. I want to talk to the manager. And that's what they've done, and what they've accomplished in a very short period of time is truly remarkable. So I think that we're catching, a breeze here, more than a breeze, a tsunami, and we are really looking forward to, and we have a bunch of people in the House that are working very hard on young, new voter registration. Huge. This is going to change the outcome of the 2018 and 2020 elections, and we know that. So it's time to take our country back. It's time to take our country back from the NRA and the politicians who are intimidated and paid for by them. It can be done. And then after the Sandy Hook shootings, people are probably somewhat familiar with this, Connecticut changed their laws so that they are the toughest laws in the country. They are the gold standard, and they did it. And it's not because the NRA did not put up a fight, it's because they put up a better and smarter fight. and they won. So this is something that it's going to be a state's issue. We're not expecting much on the federal level, perhaps. I mean, we could get hit by an asteroid, probably the same chances. But the states are doing this one at a time, and it's pretty incredible. And New York State actually does have some very, very good gun laws. Whatever you think about Cuomo or whatever, he did pass the Safety Act. Maybe it wasn't great the way he did it, but he did get it done. And we're one of the safer states in the country as a result of that. So I got off my notes. Hang on 1 second here. It's not just about safer schools, it's about a safer country. So it's easy to focus on the kids, and obviously there's tremendous amount of sympathy for a young person being cut down in their prime or even before they get to their prime. But this is about public spaces, and we are the only country in the world that has this issue. So the answer is not, good guys with guns or teachers with guns. If you look at what happened in Connecticut, less guns equals less gun violence. It's so obvious. So I really appreciate everybody being here and working on this issue, and of course all of the candidates. And I've been told so many times that I'm pissing in the wind and nothing will ever change, and I just simply refuse to believe that. So anyway, we have a great lineup for you tonight, and it is my great pleasure and honor, where is he, to introduce Dr. James Halpern. There he is. Okay. He's Professor Emeritus of Psychology and founding director of the Institute for Disaster Mental Health at SUNY New Paltz. Played a lead role as a disaster mental health responder in the immediate aftermath of Newtown. He has also provided direct service to disaster survivors and served in leadership roles at both large and small-scale national and local disasters, including 9/11, Flight 587, the Florida hurricanes, Hurricane Katrina, and the Harlem building explosion. Please welcome Dr. James Halpern.
I'm going to begin by talking a little bit about my personal experience and then lay out some basic facts that I feel like over the weeks has become so much part of the conversation. I've done a lot of disaster work. And a lot of that work was with the Red Cross, being on scene immediately after the event occurs. Nothing prepared me for my experience at Sandy Hook. And many of us remember where we were when we got that news. My wife, who's here today, I said, is it okay if I go? I'm going to need some support to be able to do that. I got her support from colleagues, had a self-care plan, but again, it was an event that attacked our imaginations. I had an opportunity, and it was an honor, I have to say, to speak with parents, grandparents, and siblings of 6-year-olds who were executed and murdered. I think that those families and others are sometimes described as strong and resilient, and they are. But I think it's important for us all to know, and I'm sure most of you do know this, that they weren't, they aren't, and they won't be okay. The community and those families are still grieving. The horror of those events linger. I have to say, when Parkland occurred, I thought, I can't believe that this is becoming normal. I didn't have the same reaction to Parkland that I did to Newtown, because something has happened that perhaps we can become numb, which is partly why I'm so glad for this shift and this change, and the fact that young people today are making sure that we don't become young. So my view of all of this is that we have a public health crisis in the United States that most folks aren't fully aware of the seriousness of this public health crisis. It's roughly 8 violent gun deaths an hour, over 90 a day, and that the United States has more gun deaths by homicide, suicide, mass shootings, mass killings. People don't even speak about all of the gun injuries that occur in the U.S. Again, a little more data. According to the American Journal of Medicine, they did a study in 2016 comparing violent gun deaths in the United States alongside of the combined gun deaths of 22 developed countries. They have 1.5 our population, yet we have 10 times as many gun deaths. And that's for women, children, adults, and so forth. In fact, the rates of gun deaths in the United States, I think, speaking a little bit to what Gianni just said, is similar to the rate of gun deaths in failed states and war-torn countries. That's where we live. Failed states and war-torn countries. I want to say very clearly that there have been attempts to explain away these obvious findings. One approach that's been used is denial, and that's to call these Parkland kids crisis actors. And you know, the Sandy Hook families, and I have to say, as somebody who got to know those families, probably for me what's most upsetting is the way these folks are trolled and threatened. And they're getting calls now to say that they're all fakes, the InfoWars and some of the real fake news that occurs that make the tragedies of those families that much more extreme. I think we all know that the statistics are real. Some other explanations that are used is the idea that violent movies and video games, which is ridiculous because the rest of the developed world has the same video games and violent media that we have, and yet there's not the same level of gun deaths. And then the mental health issues. And the mental health issues are interesting because I certainly support more resources for mental health and more attention to mental health. And also the idea that kids who are upset or angry or depressed or being bullied should get the help that they need. But it has nothing to do with the basic issue of gun deaths in this country. Because once again, the rest of the developed world has the same angry young kids, bullied kids, and so forth that we have here. The big difference is the fact that we have the 300 million guns. And there was a sociologist who, not too many years ago, did a correlation looking at gun deaths around the world, and it's just clearly correlated with the availability of guns. The problem here is just about anybody can get as many of whatever type of weapons that they want. And the so-called gun show loophole, which means that about 1/3 of gun purchases are with 0 background checks, means that folks can just walk into a show or online or through a private purchase and buy assault weapons. And they can do it impulsively, they're angry, etc. I have to say that that's the problem. It's really quite simple what the problem is. And what's more complex is what we do about it, especially with what I refer to as congressional complicity. There is something called the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, which makes it almost impossible to sue a gun manufacturer. Just want you to know that right now you could sue just about anybody, anytime, but there's one very small sliver that is a protected class. Why these folks need to be a protected class is obviously because they have effective lobbyists. And then what's referred to as the Dickey Amendment, which makes it almost impossible to do real gun research about gun violence. And this was prohibited, research on gun violence, in 1996, called the Dickey Amendment. There's some thoughts that maybe there's some wiggle room now in Congress, but at this point, I don't believe it. So what are the solutions? Clearly, we need to repeal those amendments. We need to elect leaders who are going to have the guts to repeal that Dickey Amendment and that PLCAA, and then institute gun safety laws that are going to work for us. The two that I feel as though I really need to mention is the background checks for everyone and licensing laws, and that's what Connecticut put into place. That's what also now exists in Maryland, and when Missouri took away those licensing laws, their gun deaths went up. So serious licensing laws, which means that people have to take a class, they have to register those firearms, everything needs to be registered, and I'm just thinking that some of our biggest allies are law enforcement who don't want to walk into a situation where people have automatic weapons that they don't have. So requiring background checks, registering firearms, regulating dealers, requiring the reporting of lost or stolen firearms, which exists in some states but not others. And then obviously this only happens, and it's partly why I'm so pleased to be speaking at this event, this only happens if we elect folks who are willing to defend lives rather than gun manufacturers. So that's what we got to do, and then that the opposition is very well funded and very well organized, and groups like ours are less well organized. So we've got to put up that good fight. Thank you so much.
Sorry I didn't tell our speakers what the pitching lineup was, or whatever that's called. We have Chief Peter Volkman. He has personally promised me that he will run again. That is not true. I told him if he didn't, I want my money back. He has a master's in social work, which I think is an important distinguishing mark in somebody that is policing the public. And he's made huge inroads into a more humane approach. I live in Chatham Village. I know exactly what the change has been. And I would love to see that infect all of New York State and even broader regions. He's presently the police chief for Chatham, New York. After retiring from the Ossining Police Department, he ran for county sheriff in the last cycle and has personally promised me that he's going to run again. He's internationally recognized expert in crisis response and has been featured on television and in magazines. Please, warm welcome.
All right, well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I remember Johnny called me a couple weeks ago and said, Pete, I got a couple questions for you. All right, what are the couple questions? Believe in freedom of religion? I said, of course I do. I'm American. You can believe anything you want in this country. She says, you believe in the Constitution? I said, well, yeah. I took an oath 30 years ago as a law enforcement officer to uphold it. Okay. She said, you believe in free speech? I said, of course I do. She said, good, you're giving one in Helsinki. Saturday night. So here I am right now. So I was asked to speak a little bit about what's going on today and everything else. So a couple things that go through my mind. And maybe I just see this as a wonderful night and a wonderful day. I see this as pivotal in America. I see hope. Two things that are amazing that's happening right here tonight. The first thing is we're meeting our candidates who are running for Congress and having a conversation. One thing as police chief, and I say this all the time, it's my mantra, and I truly believe this, community conversations lead to community solutions. And we have to have the conversations that are sometimes very uncomfortable to have. And we have to bring different viewpoints to the table that sometimes are very uncomfortable with talking to each other. But we must start with a conversation. And the conversation in Columbia County is right here, right now. We're beginning a very important conversation with our possible elected leaders once we get through that process and we find our candidate. And also, we're talking about an uncomfortable topic of gun violence in America. There's a problem. There's a problem. And I've taught my children this, and I just want to pass it along to you. Problems ignored don't get better. And I always say to my children, sometimes we have to face that we have problems in life, and then we can make changes. But if you don't acknowledge problems, you'll never change. So this is really important, that we are coming together as a community to acknowledge a problem, because that's how change happens. And it won't just end here, it'll go out. And we have to keep that conversation going. Too many people are dying from guns. And I don't have the one solution. And I think in society we have this, let's find a magic solution and just fix it. It's not a fix it. There's not one thing we can do to say, okay, problem's gone, this is how you do it, it's done, it's over. It's going to take a multitude of different layers of coming together. But as I learned in what I do with Chatham Cares for You and helping people and rocking the boat, I guess in more ways than one, people either love me or hate me, but I can handle that. I'm a social worker and I'm my best client as a therapist, I guess. But I always say this, when we have problems, when someone has problems, when someone's hurting, all it takes is a hand to come out and say, I'll help you. That's all you have to do. People say, what's the magic of Chatham Cares for You? What's the magic of the change in Chatham Police? I'll tell you this, I trained my officers to do this. I didn't train my officers to do this.
Amen.
And that's a huge difference. I trained my officers to be guardians, not warriors. Huge difference in words. We are not warriors to our community, we are guardians to our community. And the last thing I want to say before is, I just want to give out hope to everybody. Something happens to a school, I will be there. You want me to be there. I am trained to be there. I will handle whatever is going on in violence in any school. And I have my Lieutenant Leslie with me. He will be there. I want you to know that it is not hopeless. The police are prepared. They are the ones that are trained. And they will come in and handle what needs to be handled. Sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes it's violence against violence. But one thing's for sure, you can tell your children. You can tell your children that police are ready. We are guardians. We will guard against evil. We will guard against violence. And we will take whatever necessary actions need to be taken. Because I want you to all leave here not feeling like you're helpless and this is a terrible situation where we have no hope. It's there. It's there. But we have to get into our government, and we have to change regulations, and we have to change our viewpoints. Just like we're changing with the recovery movement. We have to change stigma. We have to change NRA, the corporate America that is buying our government. And that's why I think that tonight's the night for hope. Tonight's the night to begin. And this is the community conversation that a couple of years from now, when we do elect when we do elect a change in the 19th here, that we will say our one vote in the 19th changed gun laws. And that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you very much.
Melissa's Servant. If you can believe it, her last name is Servant. She's a public servant, and we're happy to have her and very lucky to have her. She's a public high school math teacher, a political action coordinator for New York State United Teachers, NYSUT, and a member of the NYSUT Women's Committee. She's also on the executive committee for Move Forward New York. Woohoo for Move Forward New York. They rock, these people. And Move Forward New York Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. She was recently in Albany lobbying for legislators for smart, safe school legislation and was behind the scenes in the support of her students. This is a big deal because it's not like this all over the country or even all over the state. for the student walkout on 314. Let's welcome Melissa. Radical insurrection.
Hello all. I really sat and I struggled about how to start this talk with you all this evening. Should I talk about statistics? I'm a high school math teacher. Should I talk about politics and political action, since that's what I do with New York State teachers? Or should I talk about why we're all here? Our kids are being shot. They're dying. It's tough to speak to you all here because we're all on the same page. We're trying to figure out where to go and how to go about getting there in the fastest way that we can get there. So instead, I found these words this morning, and they're written by a teacher, and I thought I should share them. It'll give a little perspective. This woman wrote this morning as she was riding the bus to DC. As I sit on a dark bus headed to DC with my 14-year-old daughter by my side, I feel as though now it's the time to share my story. My name is Connie Sullivan. I'm a 4th grade teacher at Sandy Hook Elementary School. On December 14th in 2012, I started my day with morning meeting and ended it in a firehouse, sitting on a floor with my colleagues, listening to parents cry as they waited for confirmation that their babies had been murdered. I wasn't sure what I was hearing at 9:30 this morning. It sounded as if metal chairs were just falling down on each other. Then whimpering could be heard through the loudspeakers. As I gathered my class, I taught 3rd grade that year, and put them in their lockdown spots. I asked them to please be quiet. I locked our classroom door, closed the blinds, and joined them on the carpet. And then the questions started. Whispers. What's happening? Are we going to die? Are you scared, Mrs. Sullivan? I whisper answered every question back, even the one that hurt the most. Are you worried about Molly? You see, the 14-year-old sitting next to me right now was 8 on 12/14. She was in PE class down the hall, 2 days away from her 9th birthday. Yes, I was worried, terrified, but I knew my friend would be in lockdown too, and I prayed that Molly was safe. My phone pinged a text message from my husband. I looked down, but I didn't read or respond. Is that Mr. Sullivan? You should answer so that he knows that you're alive, a student said. That student would later learn that his younger brother had been murdered. The text read, I got a lovely assortment of mixed nuts from the staff. Make your 12-year-old boy jokes now. My husband is a principal in a nearby town and was celebrating his birthday. He hadn't heard about us yet. We're in lockdown. Someone is shooting in the building. I love you, was my response back. There was no time to continue texting. SWAT was beginning to evacuate us, and all I could think about was finding Molly and getting my class out safely. As we ran past police that were standing shoulder to shoulder so that we wouldn't see what was just down the hall, I grabbed the first staff member I could find and asked about Molly. They didn't know where she was. It was the gym teacher who heard me ask, ran to me and said, I've got her, but I needed eye contact. I can't describe the scene in the firehouse. I'll never be able to find the words. My colleagues and I will often say that what happened in that school was horrific, but some of the worst parts of that day happened in the firehouse. You've all seen the footage. You all know what happened next. My life and the lives of my family have been changed in ways that you can't even imagine. Nothing about this journey has been easy. Every day is a struggle. No amount of therapy will ever make it better or even easier. It does help. It helps you to learn to cope. There's so much more to the story. Setting up a new school, bringing our students back to the classroom, and then teaching. All the while crawling through the days with a backpack of grief, anger, PTSD. Every shooting since rips open the heart, but this one, Parkland, this one seems different to my friends and me. There are so many reasons why. Because we see our students, and I see my daughter in the eyes of the students of Parkland. Our students, my Molly, they're ready to speak out, and we are ready to stand with them. So let's march today, my friends. Let's teach on Monday morning, and let's vote in November. Stay safe today. Much peace. Connie Sullivan. So we did what she asked us to do. We marched today. We chanted. We rallied. We cried when we heard some of the speeches. And now what? What about tomorrow? Next week, I'll go back, and I will go back, and I will teach. I will not walk into that building afraid, wondering when. I will walk into the building, promising to be the light for these young people in my classrooms as they forge forward, some of them in silence. We have failed them. We must look at ourselves in the mirror, and we must say, enough is enough. We must pick up the mantle of safety in our schools for all our communities. White, brown, black, yellow, red, all the colors of the rainbow. We must not get caught up in any of this rhetoric, the politics, the red tape, and the money. We have to be clear, enough is enough. Schools should be sanctuaries, not fortresses. Teachers should be facilitators, not gunslingers. We want to protect our students, but not in a gunfight. Give us the resources we ask for, the resources that parents should be demanding for their kids, the resources the kids say that they want. Listen to them. It used to be books, not bombs. Now we say books, not guns. We're asking for equitable funding for all public schools. Give us the social workers that we keep asking for, the art and the music classes, the funding for the after-school clubs and the programs. Give us the freedom to teach the curriculum that today's generation deserve. Trust us to have the tough conversations with your children and to manage the muddy waters that they have to float through in school. So what can you all do? Get involved. Go to a local Board of Education meeting. Run for your local Board of Education or local town or county legislation. Read your emails from all of the groups that you sign up for. Read them. There's information in there. Make the phone calls that we ask you to make, please. Educate yourself on the candidates that are here. Pick one. Work for them. Get involved. More important, go vote. And then once we have one, go all in. The only way that real change is going to happen is when we end this cycle of pay-to-play politics. It's time to cut the funding for the NRA. Those are the real terrorists. And give it to your kids. Put it into their education. Get the money out of politics and put it into our schools and our communities. Then, and only then, can we say that we have not failed this generation. Make sure that you're registered to vote, your friends are registered to vote, your family's registered to vote, and then put them all in the car and drive them to vote. Make sure everyone goes out and has their voice heard. Be the change, because there's no more tomorrows. The time is now. Thank you.
Kind of true. You know, it sort of occurs to me, and I wrote this, and I got criticized for it on Facebook right after the shooting. These representatives in the House and the Senate continuing to take NRA money and voting like someone's holding their short hairs, it is premeditated murder. After Parkland, we knew, maybe we didn't know where it was going to be, but we knew there was going to be a Maryland. And we know next week there's going to be a Nevada. And we know the week after that. And one of the main issues, and this has come up with several of the speakers, is that you cannot sue the NRA. You cannot sue a gun manufacturing company for product malfeasance or product malfunction. It's kind of like the Vatican or something. I mean, they got this special exemption, but it is holding us back. And it is killing not just our kids, but lots of other people, including, I think it was 600 people got shot in Las Vegas. That's premeditated murder. Every single one of those votes, those procedural votes, that is knowing that another one of these incidents is going to happen. And we can stop it. And we have to. And we will. Oh, Ian. Where is Ian? Oh, Ian, you didn't even introduce yourself. All right. Ian. President of Hudson High School Gay Straight Alliance. Woo! Rising activist, working for change in school safety and gun legislation, as well as registering the tsunami of new voters that are coming our way. Senior in high school who worries if he'll be able to go home to his parents at the end of each school day. So between these young people and the Puerto Ricans, we got this, man. We got this. Voter reg. Vote, vote, vote. Register, vote, 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 vote. Ian.
Hello. I would like to begin by thanking Gianni Ortiz for formally inviting me to tonight's event. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Ian Vidalero and I'm a senior at Hudson High School. My message here tonight is to emphasize the importance of action and promote the precautions that communities all around us need to take. We've heard a number of arguments both for and against gun control, and regardless of what side of the issue may be on, the argument hasn't produced any results. I can't help but wonder why banks, sports stadiums, and government buildings are better protected than our schools. While every school is different, and every school security plan varies, relying on a sticker in a window that says no guns allowed isn't making anybody safer, it's an invitation to death. Nearly everybody sitting here tonight had the privilege of going to a school and not fearing for their lives, wondering if today would be the last day you have the opportunity to tell your parents you love them. We want and expect the same thing.
Yes.
Just last week, during Hudson High School's student-led walkout, my own best friend sat alone in the back of the auditorium, near the closest exit due to her fearing for her life. Every day, she now focuses on her safety rather than her education. Words do not describe how much sadness breaks my heart. We need to work together to secure our schools and stop school violence. Things must change, and my fellow classmates and I are now realizing that we play a role in this as well. We are no longer sitting idly by, allowing the adults to make decisions for us. Soon enough, we'll be helping to shape the policy as we become old enough to vote. But we're not going to wait that long. We can't wait that long. Our voices need to be heard now, and our voices are starting to question whose interests our elected leaders are representing. According to OpenSecrets.org, the Center for Responsive Politics, a nonprofit, nonpartisan research group based in Washington, D.C., so far, in 2018, Representative John Fassler is receiving the 8th largest amount of contributions from the NRA, out of all 535 members of Congress. Aren't you worried that our representative might be putting the interests of the NRA ahead of his constituents?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am.
Yes.
It should not be easier for someone to get a hold of a gun rather than receive mental health services and care in our country. I, along with many of us here, call for a shift in our local and national communities from these unproductive arguments to productive compromises. On the local level, we need to focus on an overall improvement of our security protocols in our school system. Let's make sure we know who's entering and exiting the building at all times. On the national level, let's start taking a proactive role rather than a reactive one. What can we do to prevent these tragedies in the future? Our schools clearly aren't safe, and we clearly aren't doing enough to make them safe. Sadly, I felt the need to wait until last minute to fill in my statistics because it seems every day brings news of more threats and another school shooting. The Washington Post found an average of 10 school shootings per year since Columbine, with a low 5 in 2002 and a high of 15 in 2014. Less than 3 months into 2018, there have been 17 shootings already, making this year among the worst on record. That averages out to almost 2 shootings a week. We demand change. As of today, there are more than 70 gun-related threats daily and 96 lives taken every single day due to gun violence. We demand change. To the 17 lives lost in Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, we will do what it takes to make sure no lives are ever taken away again. My purpose here tonight is to offer a student's perspective and give you a glimpse into how we feel, what we value, and why it's important. While some may joke that my generation is the me generation, or that we're all living life with our heads buried in our cell phones, I can assure you that is not the case and that we should be taken seriously. To the youth of today, register to vote, educate each other, and vote our lawmakers out of office. We are the change. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to speak on behalf of the youth in our community. If you want to see change, be the change.
I had to talk him into it. He did a great job. We didn't mention this, and it's something, I have 28 nieces and nephews, and the oldest one whose diapers I changed is 46 years old and has gray hair. I don't know how that happened. This generation of kids, Ian, Columbine was 18 years ago, or 19 years ago. They have grown up in the shadow of Columbine and have been trained from kindergarten to like run and hide in a closet because somebody at any time is going to show up with a gun and try to kill as many people as possible. That is why the call to action for these students that are organizing nationally is enough is enough. It's enough. And they have, these kids that are graduating last year, this year, they have lived in this world for their entire educational experience. I mean, does that make any sense?
No. It's more than enough.
More than enough is enough. All right, I'm on my soapbox. I keep telling Cameron he has to get a soapbox here, but he hasn't so far. Anyway, we have Reverend Kim Singletary. This woman lights my heart on fire. But be careful, she's a minister, so it's 3 to 5 minutes. I'm sure it's going to be 5 minutes. She's a retired pastor in the African Methodist Episcopal Church, a community volunteer and activist, radio show producer and host on GXC, and an author. As the founder of Overcomers Ministries International Church and co-founder of God Belongs in Our Country. I don't know if it's our county or country. I added the R. Where are you, Kim? Oh, there she is. Okay. So anyway, it's either county, country, but whatever. You get the point. She uses her voice, ministerial, and life experience to help bring people together. Big welcome, Reverend Kim Singletary.
Thank you, everyone, for that really nice welcome. I just want to say to Johnny that Anna and Miss St. George over there, who are claiming Puerto Rican heritage, that check Ancestry.com and you will find us there too, all right? There's some Ghana in there somewhere, I'm sure. I am also a social worker. And so when the statistics started to fly, I was like, okay, because see, that's what we do, right? We have the statistics. And but in preparing my remarks, one of the things that I remember back in 1990, well, in 2002, when Michael Moore came out with the documentary about Bowling for Columbine, is that he gave us sort of an understanding of how we got to the place in America where we are. And that is this fear-mongering that we had to protect ourselves and arm ourselves to protect ourselves. I see people shaking their heads. And so there are those who are being fed that rhetoric today. The same spirit, the same rhetoric that was speaking back at the time of the Civil War is still out there today, giving the same sound bites. And it's doing the same thing now as it did then, which is polarizing our country, and on the guise of having to constitutionally protect our right to certain possessions. But the fact of the matter is that now, as it was then, the bottom line was the bottom line. It was about money.
Preach it, kid.
And it was about political power. And until we begin to be honest and realistic about the investment that people have in protecting their political power and their wealth, we're going to still be having this conversation next time. I have to give my hat off to Generation Z, who said it is time to call BS BS. That means being silly, y'all.
No, it means bullshit.
I'm giving an alternative.
I like that.
But the reason why the NRA spends multiple millions of dollars, not just an election cycle, but all year long, on advertisement, on running candidates, and vetting candidates, and getting candidates, and electing candidates, is because they have multiple millions of dollars to spend.
Yep.
And they have multiple millions of dollars to spend because this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, the firearm industry. Let's be clear about that. As we go forth into the community to educate our family members, to educate our neighbors, to educate our politicians, let us be clear to let them know that it's time to stop being silly. We know it's about money. We know it's about political power. And that's why getting out there to vote is so important. One of the things that I wanted to, and doctor that was here before me, I'm sorry, I already forgot your name. James, Dr. James, had said, and he alluded to, was this attempt to scapegoat mentally ill people. This is another fallacy that we need to put a pin in. Now, it is true that suicides by gun is high among mentally ill people, but that's self-murder. When it comes to shooting other people and mass killings and indiscriminate shootings, it's 4% attributed to people who are mentally ill. We have to understand that it is our responsibility to educate the population about how they're being manipulated by people who are really just trying to protect their profits and their political power. And yes, we want to elect new leadership, but let's be clear. I think there was an effort to drain the swamp. So let's be clear. It's not just about electing new leadership. It's about equipping them, educating them, informing them, and holding them accountable so that when they get in there with the people who want to protect their profits and their political power, they will not conform, they will not compromise, they will not get corrupt. There are those who have the verdict out about whether or not we could arm our school staff. Earlier today, God belongs in our county. Amen. Y'all invite me back. I'll talk about why that's named like that. But we held a civilian active shooter training today, and Investigator Anthony Brown came to do a training. We had a packed room of pastors and ministers and clergy and lay leaders. And it was very helpful, it was very informative. I was very appreciative that we have that available here in our community, but I was also saddened that it's necessary for us to do it.
Yeah.
And I was also sad to know that it's not being done in a lot of other places. So we have to realize that, arming teachers, like I said, the verdict for some people is still out, but arming teachers, there was an article back on March 15th, I think it was, that a Northern California high school teacher, showing the young people in his class a gun, discharged the gun and accidentally shot somebody in the classroom. And this is someone that's licensed to have a gun. So I'm not even sure about, some of these policies about licensing when we're taking these guns into our school systems. We do have policies in place in our school system, security officers, police officers, safety officers that are trained, as our police chief in Chatham spoke to us about, to handle these situations. And that is where we should be putting our investment, and that is where we should be putting our focus. And that is where we want to let our politicians know we want them to support. I want to just share a couple of things that I think are good approaches to handling it, because it's a multi-level approach that we're going to need in order to change this and combat this and reverse this. I believe it's going to be multi-level. And so one of the levels, I read about a top GOP donor who vowed to stop cutting checks for candidates and political groups that do not support bans on assault weapons. Now, those who are well connected with wealthy people need to put that in their ear as well, to let it be known among your circles that we're not going to financially support people who are seeking to run for office if they are not willing to support sensible gun regulation, sensible gun control, and banning not just assault weapons. Well, the DOJ yesterday, of course, the eve of this march, you decided they're going to ban bumper stocks, But also, there are other things that I want to share that, and if you're familiar with what Dick's Store Sporting Goods president, his letter and what he wrote, yes. All right. So Dick's Sporting Goods, I think I may have left that, but he gave a whole list of things that they are getting ready to do. So you can Google it. Just put in Dick's Sporting Goods president's letter. It'll come up. And he gives us some solid recommendations about legislations, and not only that, but what businesses can do, what the people who are in this industry can do to help make our community safer. I'm going to leave something for somebody else to say, but one last thing I want to share is, two more things, then I'll be out of the way. Give a preacher a mic. One is gun buyback programs, which I don't hear any conversation about. I know that Pastor Charlie Muller in Albany, he had been doing gun buyback programs in Albany for several years. I came across in my files a gun buyback program that was done in Brooklyn, New York back in 2016. And they were giving $200 prepaid cards and also $25 prepaid cards, I guess depending on, the quality and the condition of the guns, for operable handguns and assault rifles, shotguns and air guns. And this was being supported by the NYPD and the Kings County District Attorney's Office. They gave a lot of information about, how to bring the gun in and how to hand the gun over and what to do once you surrender your gun. Now, I know that a gun buyback program will be successful and work because there are some people who will sell those guns up out of that house to get them out of that house. There are some people who will sell that gun because they're mad at somebody. Come on here, somebody. I can't get away with it. There's some people who will sell those guns because they need a couple of extra dollars. And look what we could do with those guns that are bought back. We could sell those to the shooting range people. We can ship them overseas to where they're fighting with the, you know what I'm saying? But there's no conversation about gun buyback programs. I think that we should do it. I think we could get to do it. I think that we could get some Hollywood people behind it, maybe do some benefits for the communities where they come out of and try and raise some of the money to help. I think that it would help in the military and the policing departments and you know, shooting ranges or whatever, to be able to get guns that they can use and don't have to spend as much, recycle them, melt them down. I don't know, I don't care. But you know, it's an approach that is not being discussed, and I hope that those who are seeking office will give that some consideration as well. And I am closing out. I just want to say thank you to Johnny for inviting me, to all who have come tonight, and to those who have spoken before me and will follow. I do appreciate everything that I've heard so far, everything that you're saying. We are totally 100% together. My last thing that I'm going to say, yeah, I told you, I preach with a mic. I have to say this. We have a prayer line, Overcoming Ministries. We have a prayer line, and we are on the line praying 7 days a week. And April, each year, we get a list of things to focus on. And back in November of this past year, I heard from the Spirit of God, my name ain't Mike Pence, but I heard from the Spirit of God say to start praying over firearms. Pastor Iris is here, she's one of the people, and she knows, back in November, God told us to start praying on this. So when we talk about talking to the management, we got to go to a higher authority. God bless you.
Told you, right? But she rocks, yeah? Yeah. Couple of comments. He did drain the swamp. He did. It's just that he hired all of the things living in it to be part of his candidate, his cabinet. Also, with the gun buyback, if we would take the money that we're looking to spend, the number's so big you can't even remember it anymore. Is it 18 billion? And we did a gun buyback with $18 billion, I promise you, we would make a huge dent. Australia did it. They did it in Scotland. Japan doesn't even have this issue. So it's all possible. It's just a matter of having the will and being fearless enough to pursue it. Because I'll tell you, I'm a big presence on Facebook. I'm sure probably many of you know that. When this issue first came up, and I was incredibly vocal and very upset about it, I got death threats 3 times a day. They knew where I lived, they were going to show up, they were going to kill my dogs. That's dropped off. And I'll tell you, I think they're a bunch of scaredy cats. That's why they have all those goddamn guns. They can go screw themselves. Sorry about that, you're going to have to edit it. Sorry. Or go stuff themselves. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, so Glenn Gare is our next speaker, and I love this man. In fact, I've told him that he's going to be my 6th future ex-husband. Yeah, you think so? You think your wife's going to like that idea? Okay, professor of psychology and evolutionary studies at SUNY New Paltz, founding member of Move On New York. Writes for Psychology Today, including many articles related to gun violence in America, and he is mad as hell at the current national situation. So I set him loose on you.
All right. So I'm here representing Move Forward New York. I just want to say Deborah Clinton, who's the founder of our organization, was not able to be here today, but I was thrilled to talk with Johnny and be able to speak to this issue. And I got to say, Indivisible CD19 under Johnny's leadership has been awesome. So thank you so much for organizing this and together, we are going to be the resistance, and we are going to make the change that we all need. Change has to happen at the next generation. We've already failed the next generation, and that's an unfortunate truth. I recently, in my role with Move Forward New York, have worked to create a younger group called Move Forward New York Next Generation. In fact, we were fortunate to have my friend Brian Flynn, who I see in the back, come speak with the kids the other day. We were looking at kids in middle school and high school, college-age kids, because these are the people that are going to have to get us out of this mess. And I am doubling down on that generation. And where's my friend Ian? Ian, that means you. So thank you so much for being part of it. So I don't know about you, but I am tired of learning about new, senseless acts of gun violence in the United States on a regular basis. I don't want to hear that 17 bright young people got gunned down by a maniac in a public school on Valentine's Day with a legally purchased military-grade weapon. I'm tired of looking at charts showing that deaths resulting from gun violence in the United States of America are off the scale compared with any other nation in the developed world.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't want to live in a place where there are 30,000 people a year who die from gunfire. And I'm wicked tired of hearing from politicians saying that this issue is complicated. Because it is not complicated, and we all know that. The gun violence crisis in the United States is a uniquely American problem. I'll tell you about 1996. In 1996, there was an awful thing that happened in Scotland, similar to Parkland. There was a shooter. 17 people died, mostly kids in elementary school. In Australia that same year, there was a mass shooting, a maniac with a military level gun, killed 35 people. Both of those countries immediately put in incredibly stringent and sensible gun control laws, and across those two countries, since 1996, there's been one school-related shooting since then. Think about that. That same year, 1996, the United States Congress passed the Dickey Amendment, making it so that we are not allowed to study gun research or fund it through the national government. That is pathetic. Yes, there's a reason it's called the Dickey Amendment. I totally agree with that. So, I'm an academic, and when I see a problem, I like to think about what is the root of the problem, where did this come from? So, here's a little story about the history and the science of our gun problem. The gun violence problem in the United States clearly goes back to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. Okay, so I've become interested. What is the Second Amendment all about? Where did this come from? My research turned up an article published in the UC Davis Law Review in 1998, a very high-impact academic article titled "The Secret History of the Second Amendment." Okay, I'm going to read that. It turns out, and there's plenty of evidence provided in that article, that one of the primary motivations of the Second Amendment was to allow slaveholders the opportunity to keep control over slaves. And there's plenty of evidence to support that particular thesis. And I looked at that, I'm like, my God, that's disgusting. So as a social scientist, I said, well, I can easily test some follow-up ideas, some hypotheses related to this. If that's the case, then that means that we should expect attitudes in the southern states regarding guns to differ from attitudes in the northern states. So I looked up data from the Gifford Gun Violence Prevention website. And I looked at the 13 original states, the 13 original colonies, the northern states and the southern states. Every single state is rated on an A to F scale in terms of how good or how bad their gun laws are. There is no overlap whatsoever. The northern states all pass and the southern states all fail. And that is today. The gun-related laws that stand in these states today directly reflect the history of slavery. Related to that, the levels of gun violence in each state maps perfectly onto their gun laws.
Yes, exactly.
So if you want to know where this problem came from, it goes all the way back to the most shameful thing about the history of our nation. Having that amendment guide gun laws in this nation is nothing short of insane. Implementing common sense gun laws should not be so complicated. The problem, of course, is politics. I was watching C-SPAN a few weeks ago. I felt like my dad. Our congressional representative went on record saying that the gun issue is an issue of states' rights. With all due respect, that is, as Johnny would say, a bag of garbage. The kids across every state of this nation, kids in every state have the right to feel safe in school. School safety is an inalienable right. Yes. And outlawing military-grade weapons is in the interest of our entire nation. So anyone who says that this is a state issue is just dodging the question, pulling a distraction, and we are all too smart for that. Yes. In that same C-SPAN interview, John Faso downplayed the fact that he has taken thousands of dollars in campaign donations from the NRA, saying, well, I took some, but it's really a drop in the bucket. Okay, so let me show you this. I found this near my seat. This is a penny. This is too much money to take from the NRA, right here. The NRA is a terrorist organization. One of their primary goals is to maintain inhumane gun laws that exist in the United States. Elected officials who are beholden to the NRA do not stand for the people of the United States of America, and they must be voted out. Yes! So on the heels of these concerning ideas, I'll tell you that we do have reason for hope. And this morning, I saw plenty of reason for hope. There were more than 7,000 of us on the walkway over the Hudson today telling the world that we are going to change things. When I see the kids across the Hudson Valley who've become involved in the political process as a result of how crazy and outlandish this country's gotten, because they want to shape the future, I have hope. When I think about Emma Gonzalez of Parkland, Florida, who put a United States Senator in his place in front of the entire world, I have hope. As an activist, as an educator, I have become increasingly convinced that the most important thing that we can do to help cultivate and educate the next generation of leaders. So I'll say, in closing, I have no doubt that years from now, people are going to look back at the gun laws in the United States with disbelief, and they're going to shake their heads. Look around you now, right here, today, in Club Helsinki. Do you know who we are? We are the people who are on the right side of history, and don't ever forget that. And thank you.
I don't know if everybody saw, how many people in this room know who the Yes Men are? Not that many. No. Hey,
Trump's cabinet.
I'm telling you, you really need to look at this. They pretend to be like these major people in huge corporations like Dow Chemical and the NRA, and their latest thing was, it's Andy Bickelbaum, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name of his partner. He dressed up and he showed up at an NRA function in California, massive, and he was announcing a Share the Safety program sponsored by the NRA. And what it was, if you're familiar with Tom's Shoes, and there are eyeglass companies that do this too, if you buy a pair of shoes, they give one pair of shoes away free. So what he was announcing that was officially sponsored by the NRA is that if you buy a gun, we will give a gun for free to a black or minority person who needs a gun. I'm telling you, you gotta find this. YouTube, you can find it. The look on these people's faces, I mean, it was so perfect. And then, I mean, I don't know how they get away with these things and are still alive, but you can see them running across the parking lot, trying to get to their car. I mean, these people are serious, they're very dangerous, but I mean, that was just like the perfect parody. I would really recommend it to everyone. Okay, our next speaker is our beloved Carol Peckham. Where is she?
Yay!
We love her. 30 years in medical publishing as a publisher, editor, and writer, and the last 10 years worked at WebMD. Sorry, screwed that up. Part of my responsibility is working with the CDC and other governmental agency staff to promote and publish their research and guidelines. And she is a tireless activist in her area, and we love her very much.
I'm going to try to make this quick because I know we're way behind time. And what I'm really going to talk about is kind of clarifying the Dickey Amendment and what it really does, which is much worse. It doesn't ban research. It was started when the NRA was complaining about the fact that CDC research was tainted by predetermined outcomes in favor of gun control. So Dickey then got the amendment passed by the to an appropriations bill that said, none of the funds made available for injury prevention and control at the CDC can be used to advocate or promote gun control. They could research it. In fact, when the budget was passed yesterday or whenever it was, everybody was excited. Said, "Oh, CDC can now research gun control prevention," but they always could. And one of the problems was the reason that they didn't was because they didn't get any money for it. And the reason they didn't get any money for it is because the CDC budget has to have every line item approved. So under Obama, they were earmarked $10 million for gun violence prevention. And they stuck it in their budget, they set it up to the Appropriations Committee. The Appropriations Committee knocked it out. The next year they set it up again, knocked it out. The year after that, knocked it out. 2017, knocked it out. So they could research, they didn't have the money, and in fact, in the current budget, no federal agency can advocate or promote gun control. This is this week. So why is CDC research important? Now, there are a lot of studies on gun control conducted by other organizations and academic centers, but the problem is the evidence isn't very good because the data isn't very good. A RAND analysis this year of thousands of studies on 13 gun-related regulations found little persuasive evidence for the effects of most of them on reducing deaths or injuries, and other similar analyses have come to the same conclusion. Now, there are a lot of studies, and the evidence kind of weighs over on the side of gun control, but we don't have real good data. And that's where the CDC comes in. They now have a database that they're developing, which is terrific. It's taking state data from, at this point, 40 states, and I hope they're going to have the money to get all 50. And this is very clean data. It's compiled and will be used by any kind of research organizations to provide really solid and good evidence on gun control. Now, okay, I'm trying to go as fast as I can. I'm skipping lots of stuff here. So, does it matter that the CDC can't promote or advocate for gun control? And it is important because that is what they do. They are, in your face, advocating and promoting research based on interventions for basically every public health issue, including virtually every chronic and infectious disease. They have employed research to make immunization guidelines, fight tobacco interests, promote seatbelt use. They promote and advocate measures for dealing with every possible national disaster, including volcanoes and tsunamis. But they can't advocate or promote gun control measures regardless of the research, and neither can any other federal organization, including the NIH. And their advocacy is the gold standard used by doctors and nurses for healthy living recommendations to patients, and by local, state, and national governments for making public health laws. Without the CDC's muscular recommendations on gun control, our struggle for sound policies will continue to be difficult, and we will remain at the mercy of our opponents' false arguments, shaky facts. In 2015, 2 years before his death, Dickey, in an interview on NPR, renounced his amendment. He apologized and said he wished it had never been passed, but by then it was too late because it's still there. It's essential to we free our government agencies from the evil consequences of this bill. And I would urge that its elimination, as boring as it sounds, be an essential part of everyone's attempt to reduce gun deaths and on every candidate's platform.
There's a lot of power in brevity, right? So, Joyce St. George, she's a half Rican, just like me. She's a nasty, lovable woman, maybe just like me. Well, we haven't discussed that, but anyway. She is, just a quick story about Joyce. We were talking, I forget what we were talking about, it was Reclaim New York or something like that. She's like, Johnny, I'd love to talk to you some more, but I can't. And I was like, well, why? And she's like, I have to go to karate class. And I was like, you take karate? I mean, because she became the first woman in the AG office to investigate corruption after Serpico, right? So figure out, like, the timeline on that. And I was like, you take karate? And she's like, no, I teach it. Okay, gotcha. All right, you better go. All right, anyway, she's a former corruption investigator, sex crimes expert, court mediator, and consultant in conflict and crisis management who now devotes her time to improving the health and well-being of her community. And then she's also got a couple of other surprises that I can't tell you about. Joyce?
How y'all doing? Hanging in there? Yeah. Okay, I've only got about 35 minutes worth of stuff. All right, so I have a question. How many of you have had a gun to your head? No, I have. How many of you have ever had to unholster a gun in anticipation of having to shoot at somebody? No? How many people here have had people in their lives who died from gunfire? Suicides, murder? Yeah, I knew there'd be a few more. I open with this because I don't think people know what they're talking about. I don't think that people really understand, unless you've had a gun to your head or unless you've actually had to have that talk with yourself, that you're willing to shoot somebody to kill them. And know this, police are not trained to wound. They're trained to kill. It's what they have to do. So the idea that there are people in Washington who have been making decisions about whether or not killing machines should be around everywhere, to me is unfathomable. I still can't understand how somebody with no experience with gunfire, no experience of having to face that moment when either you might be killed or somebody else might be killed, is deciding whether or not an AR-15 is okay to have on the street. We've heard a lot tonight, so I'm not going to repeat it. we've heard a lot of good suggestions. Assault weapons have no place in civil society. None. Concealed weapons have no place in society. And let me tell you something. It's not just you that I worry about. You talk to a police officer, you see that they've got this little Glock on the side of their hips, and that's what they have in the middle of the street when they're walking up and down. They encounter somebody with an AR, they're outnumbered. And then, and I think Mr. Faso is part of this HR 32, the concealed weapons? Co-sponsor. What a nice guy.
He has a lifetime A rating from NRA.
So does my senator. He is a Mercer puppet. But here's what is important. If you have a concealed weapon, and if you build a society with concealed weapons, as cynical and as paranoia as that might be, the people who are going to suffer the most are the peacemakers, the police officers, the emergency management people, who are never going to know who they're walking up to. We have enough tragedies with police shooting unarmed people now, especially people of color. Can you imagine if we have concealed weapon laws? It will destroy every shred of democracy that we have, and I mean that. Because it will no longer be a democracy. We are killing ourselves, we're killing our form of government, and we're killing our hope. But you saw the kids today, were they rocking? So one of the things that I just wanted to say is, think about what you have to go through to own a car.
That's right.
You have to get the car. You have to license it. You have to get a license. You have to get insurance. You have to register it. Now, you can consider a car a killing machine. It has happened and it is happening. But the sole purpose of a gun is to kill. Now, I come about 100 miles from here. I'm way west of you. I'm in Delaware County. And I run a food pantry. And I can tell you, I know people who would not have meat all year round if they were not able to kill a deer. No one is ever going to take a gun away from that hunter. But I think my friend Zach says, if you need an AR-15 to kill a deer, I think it's time for you to put down that beer. So what do we do? I have a senator who has an A+ rating, and his idea of gun control is giving a tax break to gun owners who buy a safety box for them. Now, when I bought my gun, the first thing I did was buy a safety box. Why wouldn't you? It's a killing machine. And we're giving tax breaks to people, we're incentivizing them? That's crazy. That's not gun safety. I mean, that's just nuts. So what do we do about it? We've got the kids out there and they're doing a great job. What are we doing? We're learning, we're teaching, we're sharing, but we're angry. And what do we do with that anger? We've got to keep marching, we've got to keep rallying, we've got to keep writing to our people. I think that the Melissa was fabulous because she was saying you've got to follow through, you've got to belong to organizations that are going to share information, and you've got to act on that information. Do not wait. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you. Don't wait for Gianni. She's always calling me. But don't wait for Gianni. Do it yourself. Build your own groups that are going to defy the NRA. You know, the NRA used to be a good place. Anybody remember that? They used to do really good gun safety courses for people and all that. But then they got hungry and they got into the money. And now they're lobbying and they're selling manufacturers. That's what they're doing. So we have to keep not letting them frame the argument. If there's nothing else, we should not let people frame this argument in the way that the NRA wants us to. Okay? So fight that. That's one of your big fights. People start talking about guns and they start saying, oh, they're going to take my guns away. No, no one's going to take your gun unless you've got an Uzi or an AR or an AK or whatever else weapon of war that you might possess. So don't let them frame our argument. It's ours. And it's American. It's not a political thing. It's about safety. Finally, vote.
Yes.
Check out. I had to check out, and it's funny, I've never been so political as I am now, but I've checked out my assembly guy, my state guy, my congressional guy, my U.S. Senator guy. I want to know what their rating is on with the NRA and why. I want to know what money they're taking, because it's true, 1 penny is too much. We do not deserve to be subordinate to that kind of a lobbying group. We are the ones who are voting people in. So make sure you vote the people in that are going to keep you safe. Thank you.
How many of you have seen the NRA PSAs? Right? Our time is up. And if you're a journalist, your time is up. And if you are a legislator that is voting against the NRA, your time is up. Now, hold on. If ISIS ever produced a video like that, we would bomb them off the face of the earth. But these people have immunity, and they are taking full advantage of it. And it's up to us to fight back and vote back.
It's okay, the children already are.
Yes, the children will lead, and they are leading.
They are.
So, okay, everybody, we have a set change and a piece of music. Where's Rob? Where is he?
On stage.
He is a product of Queens, New York, and he made it up here to share his music with us. We've got a quick set change, and then we have all the candidates and Q&A, and we have a single issue panel. All questions are on the table, but we're really going to find out what their positions are on gun safety, gun legislation, and the NRA, and NRA money. Where's Rob? Where are you? Oh, he's going to be on the floor. We're going to change the set. Where is he? Is that Michael? That was a great program, right? I'm glad it was taped, because we'll shoot that out all over the country, basically. So, thank God for social media, unless it's like Cambridge Analytics buying 50 million Facebook accounts and all of their contacts.
She takes upon herself the guilt of everyone else.
Tell them about what?
Why do you do that?
Oh, well, I mean, does everybody know about this? Does everybody know who Robert and Rebecca Mercer are?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, but do you know, like, any evil thing, if you, like, peel back the top layer, they're paying for it? right? I mean, they gave $5 million to John Bolton. Okay, and then also there's this organization called Reclaim New York. Is everybody familiar with that? Is everybody familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay, they're trying to undo the very fabric of our governmental structure in the United States. And they're doing it with money, and they're doing it with lies, and they're doing it with very highly produced and very slick media. So, I mean, don't fool yourself. And we are ground zero. I don't know if you totally understand that. CD19, they want to own us. And they want to take Albany out, okay? And they're spending a lot of money, and they've got a lot of talent, and that is the focus of what this group is doing. Well, Steve Bannon, right, was the founding CEO, is that correct? Oh, Rebecca was the CEO, Steve Bannon was the founding vice president. Okay, so, I mean, anything evil that's happening in the world on a global scale, they also, Cambridge Analytics has been credited with the Brexit vote, Kenya, Trump. So, I mean, I've talked to a lot of smart political people, smarter than me. Is there any way that we can challenge the 2016 election results based on this? Because the numbers are gigantic.
Please.
Don't beg. It's really unattractive. I mean, just stop it. I mean, I beg in the privacy of my own home, but I don't beg in public. But anyway, I mean, these people, I really don't understand their psychology, and we have some psychologists here who could maybe talk about that, but not now because we have to move on to the candidates. But anyway, just pay attention. Reclaim New York, Robert and Rebecca Mercer, the money behind FASO, Reclaim New York, Trump, Breitbart News, and Steve Bannon. What are you saying over there? No. Anyway, I love her. That's my doctor. I love her. She's muttering. Anyway, this is not something to be underestimated. I'm making light of it, but I'm not really making light of it. It's serious as a heart attack. So with that, Riz Rob! Woo! Stay tuned. We have candidates coming right up.
Go Queens! Yay!
How you doing out there, though? God bless you all. God bless you all. I just want to say I'm very honored to be a part of this event that's going on, because we definitely need gun control in our schools and also in our neighborhoods and communities. You know, where I'm from in Queens, in South Jamaica, Queens, the easiest thing to get is a gun. You know, and we need some type of control, something to change. We need something, and it's a call for action. And one thing I do want to add to all of the great suggestions is that we also need prayer back in these schools. You know, they took prayer out of schools a long time ago, and prayer is powerful. Prayer is powerful. And when I was asked to reach out to do this, I had to be a part of this, and I told her I'm going to write something tonight for this event. And I hope you guys like this piece. I'm ready. Yeah. All right. If you can get up, you can. It'll be good, so we got some energy if you can. Yeah. Come on and just sway. From right to left, now sway. Okay. What he say, that the teachers, they should be strapped. They educators, not metal sprayers. They teach to keep us intact, not teach them how to shoot back. But look at why you act like they mad, shooting in class. Innocent kids, man, it's just sad. Damn. When will it stop? When was the last shot? How will it stop? If kids just go to the Walmart, go to a gun shop, or go to their pops, or go to the top of the closet and box they mom lock. Emotional wreck, over and over their head, tick like a Tom bomb. Tick. the right response to witness war. From the parents to the teachers, see our answers how we treat them. They ask me, what's your plan? Sit, I tell them Jesus, not religion, but relation. Through faith and praying, can't control the things that's out of our hands. We gotta be patient. Oh God, let's wait on him. No, he won't take long, but while we wait and get the babies, and let us pray for him. Oh God, let's wait on him. No, he won't take long, but while we wait and get the babies, and let us pray for him. Come on, pray for our kids, our daughters and sons. We gotta pray for our kids, our daughters and sons. Yeah, that's it. God bless you, thank you. Gotta get credit back in the school.
Okay, everybody. Those candidates.
Yeah.
Yay. Somebody is going to take Vasso's XXS out of that seat.
Yes.
Okay? So we're really looking forward to
not just to a warrior, but a peacemaker, and someone who has a vision for the place where we live and we love to flourish. We don't want to survive, we want to flourish. Thrive. Thank you for the editing. Anyway, so, oh, hold on. I have my glasses on. Don't forget, FASO has a AAA rating from the NRA. That's one of his major distinguishing marks, and he's a co-sponsor of HR 38, which is the Concealed Carry Across State Lines bill. So he's made his position very clear. And I will ask, before any of the candidates come up, that they let us know, have they ever received NRA funding, and will they ever agree, I mean, yes or no question, ever agree to accept NRA funding? Out, okay. Anna Maria Severo, she's always got an opinion about everything. Anyway, so I'm going to invite Tim Wagner up. He's campaign manager for Pat Ryan.
Yay!
Pat was born and raised in Kingston, New York, where his family has been for 5 generations. After graduating from West Point, served 2 tours in Iraq and returned home to launch a technology firm that worked to save lives by equipping troops with better tools. Pat lives in Gardner with his wife, Rebecca. Thank you. Where the hell are you? Okay. I'm old. I can't really see everything. It's just the way it is. Let's see. Dave Clay. Woo! No bias, but we do love Dave Clay. Anyway, is running for Congress and to continue his service of fighting for people who are being taken advantage by corporations and special interests who are only interested in padding their bottom line. When he gets into Washington, not only will he fight to take out the AR-15s off the street, but he will fight to change the law that protects gunmen. This is so critical. I hope people understand this. Do you understand this? A law that protects gun manufacturers from being sued so they are finally held accountable. Does everybody understand the implication of that?
Yes, yeah, we do.
Okay. Dave, this moment. I deal with dogs a lot. If you're clear, just do it.
Who was the first person you announced?
Sorry?
Who was the first person you announced?
Tim Wagner, campaign manager for Pat Ryan. Okay. Jeff Beals, where are you? There you are. You never said hello. Hi. I'm still standing. in. You know, that sort of thing. Anyway, local teacher and former U.S. diplomat, Jeff Sitton. Okay. Jeff has been outspoken about his position on gun violence and believes we should go above and beyond the standard gun control rhetoric to open the laws on gun manufacturers so they can be sued for damages.
Yes.
This would change the whole deal, much like what was done with the cigarette companies.
Yes.
Antonio, are you here? You're so tall, how can I miss you? The lights are so bright. It's hard to choose. I would make dinner for any of these people. It's true. Okay, still standing. Okay. Antonio was born and raised in Schenectady. Antonio lives in Rhinebeck with his wife, Lacey. We were going to get Lacey. We were. And I was really excited about, well, I mean, I'm very excited that we had
I understand. Believe me.
Well, anyway.
She's an exciting woman.
You know, I don't want to dwell on it at all. But anyway, we were going to get Lacey, and I thought that was going to be, like, whatever. Anyway, so 2 boys. They have twins, Maxwell and Coltrane, super cute. Values Antonio learned growing up in this area: hard work, discipline, service, and character. Helped him get a great education, allowed him the opportunity to start his own company designed to empower young people to learn through music. A lot of music people here. Drove him to pursue a second career as an attorney and led him to run for Congress here in New York 19. Jesse Meyer, where are you? You didn't introduce yourself. Oh, yes you did. I'm sorry. Terrible with names. It's like early Alzheimer's. Sit down. Okay. Gareth was born and raised in rural Ulster County. He drilled water wells across the Hudson Valley, earned Pell Grants, and attended CUNY. I said that. CUNY. You people, get a hold of yourselves. Okay, CUNY. Whatever. And worked for the governor in Albany, Cuomo. Under which he worked on Hurricane Irene relief and passing marriage equality in New York State. He also passed this amazing thing not that long ago. It was very progressive, actually, that he was going to prosecute administrators that punished children that walked out on 314. I mean, that was a shocker. I mean, astounding. What? I'm giving him some points. You know, not perfect, but I'm giving him some points. The repeal and replace John Faso. Gareth is running a different type of campaign. He's taking a road strip, which everybody knows, right? He's in this little Winnebago, or not so little Winnebago, and going around 163 towns and cities in New York's 1999 Winnebago to do what Representative Faso refuses to do, which is show up and listen to his constituents. Okay. Brian Flynn! Where's that little Irish guy? Is that racist? Is it racist or sexist? Yeah. I'm sort of Irish also.
No, you're not.
It's actually true. My mother's name is Portier. Well, that sounds French, but she was Irish. She was Irish. Lifelong progressive Democrat, small business owner, and 3rd generation in his family to live in Greene County. Flynn has a bold, inclusive economic plan to rebuild and revitalize New York 19 by putting the needs of everyday people over the ultra-wealthy and corporations. It's called the Plan for the American Worker. That would be great, right? Yes? Yes. Okay. As someone who fought for progressive causes, created hundreds of good-paying American jobs, many of them union, and who's gotten legislation passed in Congress, not only does he have a track record of getting things done, he also has the experience and determination to take his economic plan all the way to Washington. He's got that little smile, right? It's in the dimple thing going on there. Aaron Collier, I haven't met you. Where are you? Aaron. Aaron, rock on. Well, we'll see how it goes. I know all these other candidates, they're so boring. They're not that boring, but anyway, so.
That's not the first time we've heard that, Gianni.
Well, I know, well, anyway, that's what you do, right? So, Erin Collier. Yes. There you are. Okay, she's the newest candidate in the race. Everybody's very curious.
Good, I'm glad.
All right, stop answering back. I'm introducing you. Okay, was born and raised on a working farm in Cooperstown, the latest in 8 generations in the district. She grew up in a rural part of the district in a gun-owning family and knows that we must break the hold that the NRA has over Congress to pass common sense gun safety reform and to protect our kids and our communities. These are our candidates. Okay. All right, so let's go. I really want everybody to make clear what their stance, their position is with the NRA. Have you ever taken money from the NRA? Do you ever plan to take money from the NRA?
I have absolutely never
Okay,
taken...
let's start with you, Erin.
I'm sorry. You're looking at me, sorry. I'll take a start on this. I have absolutely never, ever taken a single cent from the NRA, and I will absolutely never, ever take a cent from the NRA.
Yay!
Not a single penny.
What is your position on gun legislation, gun safety, school hardening, which is an absolutely bizarre and offensive term, but that's what they talk about.
Well, maybe...
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So
Okay.
state your position because
Sure.
everybody gets 3 minutes.
Okay.
And then we have a Q&A.
Okay, so let me just start then by thanking Indivisible for organizing this event today and having all of us here to talk about this very, very important issue. Thank you to students and teachers and law enforcement and very important groups like Black Lives Matters, Moms Demand Action, Everytown, just everybody for all of your tireless organizing to stop this gun violence epidemic and to save lives. It makes me so happy and gives me so much hope to see young people and students marching today and mobilizing millions of people across our country to address this really, really serious issue. I actually have a good friend whose mom is a teacher at Sandy Hook. She's a kindergarten teacher. And on that day she was teaching and actually had hid with her students in her classroom, her 5-year-old kindergarten students. So, you know, it's been over 5 years and to this day, talking to my friend, he can't even tell the story without crying. It's that, you know, this is really heartbreaking and unacceptable pattern that we're seeing in our country and one that is in no other countries like we've heard so many speakers today talk about. My sister is a teacher in a public school in upstate New York, so this is also a very personal issue for me. I mean, students and teachers shouldn't have to go to school every day fearing for their lives. It's supposed to be a learning environment. It's supposed to be where people grow. It's not supposed to be a place where they have fear. I did grow up in a gun-owning home in Cooperstown, on a working farm in Cooperstown. So my dad and my brothers hunt, my cousins hunt. My cousins actually come to my house to hunt. So I am very familiar what safe and responsible gun ownership looks like. And we're not trying to demonize safe and responsible gun owners. What we're trying to do is stop the gun violence and stop the unsafe access to guns in our country. The NRA does not support safe access to guns in our country. And as long as Congress continues to be bought and paid for by the NRA, nothing is going to change. John Faso takes money, obviously, from the NRA, from the Mercers. As long as we continue to have Congress members like him in power, nothing is going to change. we need Congress members who are not going to take a single penny from the NRA and who are not afraid to stand up to the NRA and to fight for sensible gun safety laws. We also need people in Congress that understand what it's like to go through the challenges that people in our district face. And we need somebody who is going to stand up for them, stand up for us, and really fight for us. And I know that I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin.
Would you like me to go next, Jenny?
Brian, you're up.
Thank you.
Okay.
To answer the specific question, not only would I never take money from the NRA, this week my position and our campaign's position on reducing gun violence was validated because we were one of the few candidates in the nation that was able to receive the Gun Sense distinction from Mom Demand Action. So we're very happy, and I want to add that to my bio going forward. Because in times like this, there's nothing more important than that. It was also mentioned in the intro that I am the third generation to choose Greene County as my home, and we have some Greene County people here. Hello, Greene County. Well, I did clap it up for I was clapping up for them. They're from Greene County. I wasn't clapping for me. But here's why that's important and why it's a good segue. Because in Greene County, just like we heard from Joyce about Delaware County, hunting and guns are very much a part of the culture. And in fact, my neighbor John, when I stand on my front steps during hunting season, I can see him out in his blind. To be clear, on my front steps, I cannot see Alaska. I can't see John. I have talked to John about, not Alaska, I have talked to John about reducing gun violence and what we can do together, and a lot of other people in our community. And what when we talk openly about it, and they support what we support in this room, they support that we can in fact respect the Second Amendment and at the same time reduce gun violence. The idea that you can't do one without the other is the argument of the gun lobby, the NRA, and those bought and paid for politicians. And that's exactly why we're all here today, is to change that narrative. The overwhelming majority of Americans, 97% of Republicans, are for universal background checks and for eliminating the gun show and internet loopholes. We have to stop, we can't allow those special interests to stand in the way of sensible gun safety regulations and reductions to gun violence. We can't allow them to stand in the way. Now look, I have some experience in this area. When my brother was killed by terrorists, like those kids down in Florida, I was just a teenager when that happened. But we took on special interests and in order to seek justice, and we changed laws in order to improve airline safety. We changed laws, and it saved lives. And that's what we're talking about here today. We need to change laws in order to save lives. Kids should not have to go to school and be worried about being attacked by guns. I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and every day when they leave, I worry about their safety and the safety of all the kids around America right now. So we need real solutions. And those solutions include ensuring that weapons of war get out of the hands of the civilians. Full stop. And we ensure that people who shouldn't have access to guns can't get access. And we need to finally, as we talked earlier, we need to finally have the Dickey Amendment, which we talked about, we need to have it actually repealed. So as Carol had mentioned, we can actually have the CDC do its job to help promote gun safety and protect all of us. But you know what I've heard most about tonight? And what makes me, and there are other policies which we've already gotten approved and validated by Moms Demand Action. But what I heard most tonight, what was so encouraging about this conversation, is people coming together, right? We need to have law enforcement and psychology experts and the clergy and teachers and all of us come together, and gun owners, to be part of the solution, because it's that coming together, not apart, that's going to enable us to solve the solution, because that's the American ideal, coming together, not apart. It's that seemingly impossible goal of becoming truly indivisible. And right now, on this issue, we need to be indivisible, and we need to make it happen. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm new at this, guys.
I'm just going to let you launch in here. Introduce yourself again.
So hi again, Jesse Meyer, I'm Garrett's campaign manager. Just start from the top, Garrett has never and will never receive funds from the NRA, period, full stop. is unacceptable. Absolutely. So I do want to start off by saying that Gianni touched, first of all, thank you Gianni, Zach, everyone else who spoke here before. I thought it was extremely informative. This only happens when we get together, just like this. This is just one of the steps, right? We need to keep pushing. And it's been a long time coming, right? Gareth, myself, other millennials, we are, as Gianni mentioned, part of the Columbine generation. I've been going and doing state foot drills since I've been in kindergarten. Like, this has been going on my entire life. And what does it take? Every few weeks, few months, we have another instance coming up. So we need to pay attention again. Like, what's different this time, right? It's that young folks, these kids, like Ian, who've gotten out here, like these kids over in Parkland, who said enough is enough. And we can no longer, this is untenable, and we need to get out here and do something about it because the folks in charge are not. And we need to make sure we're following their lead. We're taking that energy and we're actually translating that into real laws and real change. So that means, again, banning assault rifles. We've done this before. We let that lapse. Like, this is unacceptable. We need to make sure that we have, full licensing, full universal background checks, safe storage laws. As Kim mentioned, the buyback program, right? Like, we need to put it all on the table, right? This is too serious enough to not be looking at every option we have out there and actually committing to it. I mean, how many of you guys were out at a march today? Maybe just a show of hands, right? Good folk, yeah, good showing, right? Like, and there were thousands of people out there, and that is incredible, right? Like millions, yeah. We take it across the entire country. Like that is a force to be reckoned with, but only if we match it and we back it up with actual legislation and policy change. And that's what we need to do. Gareth has a background working in Governor Cuomo's administration. They passed the SAFE Act after Sandy Hook, right? Now, exactly, real legislation is on that. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some things that could have been done better with it, right? But hey, we need to be doing something right there. The other thing I want to kind of mention, one of the other speakers mentioned, is that there are a lot of other, sensible gun owners out there, like who agree with common sense gun safety laws, right? But we need to be careful of how the debate gets framed and how that we can lose it on the messaging, right? Gareth grew up on a farm. He had 1,000 chickens, that they had to take care of and stuff like that. They had a shotgun, if a coyote came around and you shoot it in the air, scared it away. It's a tool. It is a tool. There is not that emotional connection. But a lot of people have that to it, right? We can't disregard that if we want to actually make change happen. Now, we'll move past them. We'll organize, we'll get it done, but we have to remember that there are a large proportion of people in New York's 19th district that are gun owners and are, normal, believe in common sense gun safety. And it's going to take someone like, say Gareth, who has experience, like, say, using a firearm, and be able to come at them and be like, hey, we can do this smarter. We all agree on the same stuff, on how we can do this safer. Let's do it, right? And I'm going to put a cap on this by saying that I do want to make sure that we're looking at other, someone mentioned earlier, like the number one deaths from firearms are for suicides, right? But there are other concerns we have to do. We can't just look at middle class communities when they get a school shooting and then we all rally together. We have to remember that this is going on every single day in many of our communities, and we can't forget about those kids, those people that are getting harmed and injured and killed by this. So, thank you very much. The only way to do that again is by repealing the FASO. I believe Gareth is the best one to be able to do this. So, thank you.
Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight?
Antonio,
good to be here.
I was going to mention you.
I was going to jump right in like everybody else.
Okay, jump in. All right, perfect. How are you going to beat FASO? And I want to hear your position on the NRA.
Yeah, so we're switching up now?
No, we're not switching up.
Oh, okay.
No.
The NRA answer, no. I have not taken money. No, I never will. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, and I also want to make a note, as Flynn pointed out, I too am proud to have received the distinction from Moms Demand Action. Very proud of that distinction. Thank you. I want to talk to you for a minute as a father. As noted earlier, I'm the father of little boys, 4-year-old twins. And they came home about 2 or 3 months ago and talked to my wife and I about one of their classmates telling them that he was going to shoot. And as you might imagine, that can leave a certain pit in your stomach when you hear that. It certainly did with me. I sat down with Lacey and we talked about what to do. Obviously went back into the school, talked to the teacher about it, and she assured us that, that's not tolerated. But it made me think a lot about what our young people are being exposed to when it comes to violence in this country, and in particular guns. And as a father of boys, and watching them come up in this world, it's opened up my eyes. Now, I've seen it. I know where I come from. I'm born in Schenectady. Neighborhoods weren't always safe. I've seen it, close and personal. But to live in a safe neighborhood with good schools, and to still have to be concerned, it tells you how deep the problem is and how pervasive it is in this country. And it's bothered me tremendously. And I think one of the things as I marched today on the walkway with the young people and the older people and everybody, I was very moved by the energy, the positivity, the belief that we can do something about this now. Because of the young people, because they have stepped up and said, we will show you how to deal with this. We will take the politics out of it and make it about what's right and what is wrong. And the fact of the matter is, it is wrong. It is wrong that we can't just simply pass legislation that has universal background checks. It is wrong that we cannot close the gun show loophole. It is wrong that the CDC is not properly funded. It is wrong that military weapons of war are able to be bought and sold and then used in churches and schools and theaters and in our streets. That is flat wrong. It is wrong that a domestic abuser can purchase a gun legally. Do you know that right now? Right now, women are going to die 5 times. They're 5 times likely to die in a domestic violence dispute when there's a gun involved. Right now, we have literally 4 children a day dying from gun violence, 19 a day hospitalized. This is an epidemic, and it is one that we have to fight diligently and come together for our future. Come together. And I will stand and make that fight and bring to bear the passion that I'm displaying right now, because it means that much to me as both a father and as an American, and as somebody who is deeply committed to making sure that we have safe communities all across this country. Thank you.
Thanks, Gianni. I'm Jeff Beals. I'm a teacher in our community where I actually have to be involved in these active shooter drills. I'm a former U.S. diplomat. I'm also a candidate for Congress, but I'm so happy to be speaking today, not as a leader, but as somebody being led by these young people who are standing up here, standing up in Washington, who walked out on classes at my school and stood up for sense and sanity in our country. They are standing up to this epidemic of gun violence in our schools. And I want to use this moment to speak about the other places that we have to stand up to gun violence. We have to stand up to gun violence in our streets, where people of color are the victims of gun violence and where we badly need an end to racism and criminal justice reform. We need to speak up and stand up to gun violence when it takes place in our homes, where indeed women are disproportionately the victims of gun violence because of domestic abuse. We have to stand up for it there too. We have to stand up to gun violence in our military industry, which at this moment is draining our budget in the manufacture of more weapons of war at a time when we should be putting that money towards peace and towards diplomacy, as I practice as a diplomat. And we have to stand up to gun violence in the terrain of our rigged economy, where one of the real culprits here are gun manufacturers who stand against us right now because they want to sell more guns. That is simply at the root of so much of this, because they want to make sure people will keep buying the product and that people will be customers and consumers. But we're more than that. We're citizens. And we're showing it today. We're showing it here. We're showing it in a march in Washington where my mom is today. We're showing it where my students are in marches everywhere. That we are citizens, we have a voice, and that voice is an end to this senseless epidemic and a stand for peace and domestic tranquility which is what our Constitution called for and what any candidate for Congress has to make sure exists in this country. So thank you.
So I guess I'll answer the question also. I will not take any NRA money. I will never take any NRA money. I want to sue the NRA. I am a trial lawyer, but we take care of things like that. We also want to take care of the opioid problems that the pharmaceutical industry has happened. But right now, I want to tell you about the walk over the Hudson today. This is my orange shirt talking about gun safety and being really inspired by all the young people that were out there. 7,000 people, but it gives me hope for the future. It really, really gives me hope. The children are leading us, and the children have shamed us for not doing something before now. We do have a Congress that's owned by the NRA. We all see that. We all know that. And we have a congressman in John Faso that is not only beholden to him, but totally kisses up to the NRA. Totally. So one of the things, and Joyce, you mentioned earlier, and wherever you are, and it's something that's very personal to me, H.R. 38, the concealed carry reciprocity law that John Faso introduced. Well, back in 1976, when I was working as a carpenter, getting money to go to law school, I had a buddy next door to me working as a carpenter, and he went off to the police department, the New York City Police Department. And within a year and a half of that, he was shot dead in a subway station trying to stop an armed robber who had an illegal concealed weapon. I want to stand beside John Faso and talk to him about his legislation. When he says that he cares about states' rights, what about New York states' rights? We vet everybody that gets a concealed weapon. We make sure that they're safe. I've done that. You go to a judge and it's got to be approved. There are 22 states in this country that allow abusers, domestic abusers of women, to have handguns, to have concealed carry. Those people can walk into our state and carry a concealed weapon, loaded concealed weapon. There are 12 states that do no vetting whatsoever. You can just mail it in, and you have the right to bring a concealed weapon into New York because of John Faso's introduction of this law. Now, it hasn't been approved by the Senate, but right now I'm not sure they're going to get there, but that's what he's trying to do. Now, every police chief in this state is against it. Every police officer in this state is against it. It puts them at risk, and it puts all of us at risk. And the only reason John Faso is doing that is to keep his A+ rating by the NRA. We must take down John Faso. Right? Everybody, we must. It is essential that we do that. And I'd like to take a piece out of myself.
Behind the bar,
Right. So everybody that I want to say ditto for what everybody's talked about in gun violence. We certainly need to ban weapons of mass destruction here in the United States, right? We need to do that. Let's take on the manufacturers, because that's something that we trial lawyers do well. If you allow us to take down the gun companies, the manufacturers, when they don't produce safe guns, when they could produce smart technology that would prevent children who take out a gun out of their drawer of their father and pull the trigger because they don't realize it's loaded, they don't know what it is. The gun manufacturers could do that in a second. The bump stock thing, they could have designed it in a nanosecond that would prevent the bump stock from working. All of this is something we should and must do when we get to Congress. I thank all of you.
So I just want to thank Gianni for this event. I think it is important that people like her are stepping up to have a conversation, and I really think what the chief said earlier is that community conversations create community solutions. So, good job. So, one thing, Pat couldn't be here tonight, and he greatly apologizes for that. We had an event in Stone Ridge that we had planned for a few months, and so he had to be there tonight. But there was an op-ed today that we published in the Hudson Valley 360, and I just wanted to read that, because when we're talking about the candidate's point of view on gun violence, I think this points it out clearly. So I'll start. It's hard to describe the sound, which is surprisingly faint, and the feel of an automatic gunfire coming at you. The bullets are moving so quickly it feels like each round sucks the oxygen out of the nearby air as it passes. By the time I had completed 2 combat deployments in Iraq, I had grown somewhat accustomed to the harrowing and very unnatural situation. So when I first heard the audio captured by an eyewitness in the mass shooting in Las Vegas last October, I assumed it was footage from a war zone. It took me several minutes to wrap my head around the fact that this was happening on U.S. soil. That hundreds of rounds fired at high velocity from military-style weapons designed to kill human beings en masse were raining down innocent Americans who had gathered to enjoy a country music concert. The day I graduated from West Point, I took an oath to protect the Constitution and the Second Amendment. My fellow soldiers and I have risked our lives to protect these rights. But with all rights comes responsibilities. Our home should not feel like a war zone. We cannot let this continue. Over the course of my campaign, and especially over the last few weeks, I've talked to far too many parents who describe a similar sick feeling in the pit of their stomach as they drop their children off at school. I keep thinking of my mom's first grade class. When I was overseas, the care packages they sent, filled with homemade cookies, scribbled messages in crayon, and hand-drawn stick figures, got me through some of the toughest times of my deployment. Now those same kids and millions like them at schools across the U.S. practice active shooter drills on a regular basis. I can hear the emotion in my mom's voice when she talks about running those daily drills with her students. As a teacher, she never imagined she'd have to practice hiding her kids in the classroom closet while the lights turned out. My mom's generation grew up doing nuclear fallout drills. Now her students practice how to duck and cover from automatic weapons. They are the mass shooting generation. As a West Point cadet and Army officer, I was trained in the effective and safe use of firearms. We were taught about the responsibility that comes with carrying a gun. During my time in Iraq, I carried a high-powered assault rifle that's nearly identical to the AR-15, the weapon used last month to gun down 17 students and educators in Parkland. Just like the military counterpart, the AR-15 is designed to fire a high volume of rounds at a very high velocity for the purpose of inflicting as much damage to the human body as possible. This same weapon that I carried in combat has been used in 11 mass shootings in the past decade to gun down Americans on our own soil, many of them young children and teenagers. These weapons of war have no place in our schools, at our concerts, in our movie theaters, or on our streets. The U.S. has a gun violence epidemic. We've already had 17 school shootings this year, averaging once every week. So I would say the more, and I wish I could finish, but I think the most important part of this story, and where Pat would feel, is he's been a military veteran. He's carried these type of weapons, and he knows what these weapons inflict upon people, and that's to kill people. And I think the important thing as a military veteran is that he can talk to people about what these weapons are doing. And it comes to a point where we have to do something about this. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's such a powerful subject, and it's such a salient subject, such a prescient subject. Thank you so much. Do we have questions from the audience for each or any of the candidates? And we are obviously gun panel specific, but any question is suitable.
Yeah, right here.
Do you want to come up and speak to the mic? What's your name? Paul Paul Troutman from Jewett. Go ahead, please. Yeah, of course, it should be live.
Hi, as a retired history teacher, I was gratified that somebody talked about the Second Amendment and its horrible origin. However, I've heard two of you refer to the Second Amendment, and the origins notwithstanding, for 200 years we had an idea of what it meant. Basically referring also to the introductory phrase of a militia and well-regulated. And so what I would like to know, this changed after Heller, and the NRA kind of bastardized the whole thing, if you'll excuse my language. I'd like to hear your opinion about the Second Amendment.
And I'm sorry, who did you specifically ask? No, I need, pick one. Pick one and you have a 1-minute response.
Since I did mention the Second Amendment, I will address this
Okay,
issue.
thank you.
And I think what's most important is the phrase that you said was well regulated. Antonin Scalia, the Supreme Court judge, gives us, in fact, the clear understanding, no, he gave us a clear understanding that well regulated is completely appropriate and falls within the bounds of the Second Amendment. There is no reason why we cannot regulate gun safety and reducing gun violence. That is very clear and is well within the bounds of the Second Amendment. So rather than litigate the existence of the Second Amendment and make that our focus of an argument where it would require 75% of the states to approve it if we were going to repeal it, I say we use Scalia's rationale, which has been tested in court of law, that we can have regulations. We just need the political will and wherewithal to do that and stop being so afraid of the NRA. I don't know why we as a country and we as politicians and we as leaders are so afraid of them. They're not that powerful. You're the ones who are powerful, and that's how we're going to beat them. Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up? Okay, perfect.
I'd like to just say something.
Go on.
I want to make clear that nothing we've talked about, nothing that's been said tonight is unconstitutional under the Second Amendment. Nothing. All of this we can regulate. We have regulated. We have banned AR-15s and weapons of mass destruction. We have done that, and we can continue to do that. The SAFE Act has been found to be constitutional, just so everybody knows. So none of the laws and the restrictions we're talking about are unconstitutional. The Second Amendment is a red herring. That's not the problem. The problem is the NRA. Thank you.
Next question.
Dave, over here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, come up here. It's easier maybe if you pass the mic.
Yeah, it's
Well, I mean, it has logistical challenges.
First, I just
What
want to
is
say.
your name?
Oh, my name's David Balin. I'm from Clover. First, I wanted to just acknowledge all of you. Each one of you has so much to offer, and I think everybody here would be happy to be supporting you as the final candidate. My question is, and it is to the panel, I have great concerns that there's now 7 candidates running in a primary. None of you, statistically, will get a majority, because you're all desirable. My question is, for the 6 that don't achieve and win the primary, what will you do to bring the base together to reach out to not only the Dems, but across the aisle to support the successful person in the primary?
Thank you, really, thank you. It's a super important question.
I can start with that. Thank you so much for raising that point.
1 minute each.
Okay, it's a really great point. I think that being unified is really important. Where everyone is on the same team. Our objective is to beat FASO, and our objective is to make sure that one of us succeeds in beating FASO. That's what we're all here for. I think that no matter who wins, I will support whoever the Democratic nominee is, and I will do everything that I can to help that person beat FASO. And I think that we should all work together to make sure that we're positive and supporting each other. I think being unified, especially in a country that is so divided, that it's really important that we come together, and especially amongst our own party, we should really unite and support one another. So again, I will support whoever is the Democratic nominee, and I think that it's important to do that in order to beat FASO.
My entire campaign is about the American worker, and not only is it about creating jobs, but it's about removing the barriers. And I think everyone on this stage agrees that that's what we need to focus on. And we all seem to have shared a lot of the same views and the same priorities. But I actually want to address the issue that you talked about, which is the divisiveness that can happen if you don't come together. I think what we've seen in our own party is we've allowed Donald Trump to actually use income inequality to fuel division in the entire country. And we as Democrats have allowed him to exploit our fears and worries while he was passing laws that actually benefit his donors. So I think right now what we need to do is we need to come together as a party and as people in this community and as candidates here. And I can tell you right now that I would be honored to be represented by anyone on this stage, and I will do everything in my power to help them get elected if I'm not the one chosen. So thank you.
The number one given is of course we have to beat FASO, whether that's with Gareth or that's one of the other gentlemen and ladies that are up here tonight. I don't know if you've seen, Gareth has been going around with when the elections last year. He went around with many of the candidates out there, making sure we're getting Democrats elected across the board. It's not just that's all the way down to town board, all the way up to like folks running for county level positions. Like that is what he's going to do as soon as regardless of whatever happens on June 26th. He'll be out there. He'll be on doors. He'll be knocking either for himself or he'll be knocking for one of the other candidates that make it up there. So absolutely, thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Have every intention of supporting full force the eventual nominee. This is going to be a fight. It really is. FASO won by about 27,000 votes against Teach Out, 167,000 to her 140 something. 178,000 folks were registered to vote, did not come out. It's a significant number. 100,000 were eligible for enrollment, and were not enrolled. So it's going to take everybody to engage. And so it's imperative that candidates do the work. Get out there and make sure they do their part to generate excitement, to generate energy, to generate participation, because we win when we turn out, when we show up. And so you better believe I'll be out there no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, I agree. We are all here to beat John Faso. I wish we could all do it together, surrounding him relentlessly, trading off every blow. It would be beautiful.
I think you are.
I think we are doing that. I think we are. We're pummeling them all over the district right now. I mean, we have between us covered every inch of this place many times over. So that's something I believe in deeply, and I'm looking forward to doing it. We're all going to unite to beat John Faso. And one of the slogans of my campaign is Unite New York 19. And the only thing I'll add to it is I don't think anybody, I mean, there's probably a few of you that came here for the individual star power of one of the candidates, but most of you came out here for a cause. That's actually what unites us, standing for the issues that we care about, standing up for Medicare for all, standing up to an economy where working people are not getting by anymore, standing up to face down income inequality, which has reached a point where it threatens our democracy, standing up to the corporate power that has bought out our commerce. That will unite us in the end, and I know it's going to bring us together. Thanks.
I think it'd be a surprise to all of you, but we've actually spent a lot of time together. Aaron, you're new to the bunch here.
We played basketball.
But yes, we played basketball, and I've actually gotten to like these guys. And I will get to like Aaron, I'm sure. And I would support everybody except Brian. Brian, I'm not sure about that one yet.
But because I beat you one basketball game. One. He won every other one.
But honestly, I'm only here because we need to beat John Faso. That's the reason I'm here. And I would do everything that I can to support whatever candidate gets to have the honor of running against John Faso. And I do hope it's me, and I'm here because I think that we can all come together. Right? I've been talking about neighbor to neighbor. All of us in this community are neighbors. Can't we get back to that? We talk about the divisiveness. Can't we get back to seeing each other as a neighbor and talk to each other? Our interests are aligned. Medicare for all is something I believe in. Let's get good jobs. Let's take care of education. We can do this together. Thank you.
Pat would definitely support any one of these candidates on stage. There's no question about that.
We're not sure about you. You're not sure what you would support.
I would support any of these.
Writing, okay, so I just want to
I-
you, and don't worry, I will make sure that happens.
I know Pat would support any of these candidates on stage. And I think the greatest thing is that when we all come together, we are stronger. I worked in Virginia in 2017, and there was a competitive primary for the governor's race in Virginia. And after that primary, both sides came together, and look at the result we had in Virginia. We were able to almost take back the House of Delegates. If it wasn't for some court proceedings, we would have. And I think that's the greatest result that we need. And as everybody said, John Faso has to be beat. There's no question about that. There's too much on the line. And so I would hope that every candidate that's on the stage, and I know Pat will go knock on doors, make phone calls, help raise dollars, do everything in their ability to make sure that the candidate wins. So, thank you.
Okay, so I don't want to be lazy by sitting down or whatever, but so do we have unanimous consent?
Yeah.
Well, no. Let me be clear. We have unanimous consent. Whoever emerges from the primary, you guys are going to work your asses off for them. And you're going to make sure that the people that were supporting you will support them.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. No, yeah, hold on, is this on tape? Hold on.
Gianni even seems a bit disappointed.
No. I'm not disappointed at all. I just want to be clear. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Tag. Hang on.
Everyone is, but I am.
Hi there. Can I just go quick? This is for everyone. What do you think Faso's weak spot is? And what is your goal in order to eclipse that perceived power that he has? What is his weak spot and how will you attack it?
So I would say Faso's top weak spot is his votes. His vote on health care is terrible. Secondly, I think the biggest thing with Faso is he doesn't talk to voters. I mean, when's the last time he's been around? Guns are one of the top issues we hear from voters every day. Why wasn't he marching today to protect kids' lives? I mean, this is the great...
He was afraid he was going to get thrown
Absolutely.
over the railing.
So
That's why he
I think his greatest weakness is, one, he votes bad for the district, and two, he doesn't talk to voters. And so I think the Democratic energy we're seeing each and every day doesn't bode well for him. And so, he can go back to doing what he did before, helping corporations screw the average person. Let's get him out. So, thanks.
I think John Faso's biggest weakness is that he has been a corporate lobbyist, and he continues to be a corporate lobbyist, and he is a corporate lobbyist who supports places like the NRA and the fossil fuel industry and all the industries of Wall Street. He takes money from hedge fund managers. He is the epitome of a politician who is only out for power and money, Reverend. You had that right. He's about power and money. I've spent my career taking on power and money. I've taken down corporations that have done predatory things to our environment, to their employees, to every working class person that gets hurt. That's what I've done. I believe that I'm the polar opposite of John Faso. I'm not taking money from Wall Street or from corporate executives or from corporate law firms. I'm not taking money except from people who have given us small donations. I'm going to be the polar opposite in terms of representing the people, only being beholden to the people I represent. Thank you.
power and gravity. There is.
John Fasso's weakness as the representative for New York 19 is that he's unrepresentative of New York 19. How's that for graphic? And I'm running for Congress because I feel I am. I'm a working person in this district that voted against John Fasso. I'm trying to raise a family here. My wife also works here. We have our 2 sons growing up here. And I watch day after day as this man is clearly serving the interests of his donors and not me, one of his constituents. And that bothers me deeply. He is somebody that works for corporate America. He doesn't work for the people. My campaign was endorsed by the national group of former Bernie Sanders staffers called the Justice Democrats. They did it because I'm standing up for a people's platform, not a corporate platform, and doing grassroots fundraising and not doing the big dollar, big plate donation fests that John Fasso is running in Albany and New York City. And I think when we present that contrast, be representative will be the unrepresentative. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a number of the things that were raised, but I also think it's important to highlight his views and his behavior when it comes to women, particularly in light of where we are in this country and the mass amount of movement we've seen from women stepping up in response to long, deeply profound misogynistic tendencies within our culture. It is a great opportunity now to see what women are doing and fighting, and men stepping up as well. I certainly am doing that with my wife, who's really been at the forefront educating me on these issues. Let's talk about his record, though. Called Roe v. Wade a black mark on the country. Voted 6 times no, equal pay for equal work. Voted to repeal the ACA, and voted for a bill that essentially makes it a pre-existing condition to be a woman. Looked Andrea Mitchell in the eye, suffering from a brain tumor and a spinal condition, promised her 3 times on camera, and said, "I will not take away your health care." Turned around and did just that. All of those things, in my opinion, disqualify him. Thank you.
A few of the candidates have mentioned Fasso's voting record and how he's not representative of the folks in this district. But we have to look at why. Why is that? Gareth mentions fairly frequently, again, that the average wealth of our congressmen and women right now is $1 million. That is 18 times more than the average wealth of a household here in New York's 19th district. Like, is it any wonder why that they're not looking out for us? Whether or not they had working class roots or whatever it was, they forgot it. They forget the anxieties that people are going through on an everyday basis. Gareth had to work to put himself to go to school. He's had to work to make sure he's gotten to where he has in the governor's office. He doesn't have a dad or a mom to write a check and be a donor and get him in there. He had to do it on his own merit. And that's the sort of work ethic and sort of ethos that he brings that's going to stand in stark contrast. Plus, he's going to all 163 towns and cities in this district, and he's going to be there. And folks are going to see him. They're going to know what that contrast is. Thank you.
John Fasso voted to take away our health care, and I've been advocating for Medicare for All since 2004. John Fasso has been selling out to major corporations and giving money away to shareholders. I've created hundreds of blue-collar American jobs. John Fasso has voted to destroy our environment. I've been an environmental activist for decades. John Fasso has voted and supported policies that help the gun manufacturers, and I've actually gotten the certification from the Moms Demand Action. What we need is a contrast to John Fasso. When we look at the issues that matter to people in this district, we need someone that can take him head on and offer a vision of what not just against him, but also forward, and how we can look ahead and provide something in America that's not just about taking down John Fasso and Donald Trump, but also something that gives it a vision of America that works together and actually does things for the American worker. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I'm going to beat him. Thank you.
So John Fasso voted to repeal healthcare and took healthcare away from thousands of people here in this district. I actually personally advocated for, fought for, and secured funding for BASA Healthcare Network, which is a huge healthcare network in this district. So in order to have funds for them to be able to provide health services which are essential in the rural areas, I actually secured those health services while John Fasso was taking them away. The repeal of the individual mandate alone is estimated to take away health care from 20,000 people here in this district. John Fasso also voted against the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act multiple times, which is just keeping women from being able to earn the same amount as men do. Women earn 79 cents on the dollar that every man earns. That is completely unacceptable. John Faso has voted for restrictive laws against women's health care. As a woman, I will not let that happen. That absolutely, I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that women's health care is not threatened. Time, please. Thanks very much.
Yes, you can ask a question. It's Dr. Ana Maria Severo. The only comment that I'm going to make why John Faso is not appropriate for representing this district, he has voted 88% in lockstep with the Trump administration. And we've got what we've got now with his help. So,
the different voters and the independents, how are you going to get them out to the polls and not vote for Faso? I mean, that's a huge percentage. Let Dr. Acevedo in 19, look, and tons of indifferent people who didn't go vote. Yeah, and the independents, how are you going to get them in your corner?
Well, you got to show. You have to show up. That's what you have to do. You have to show up. You have to listen. You have to humble yourself. You have to engage. You have to know the issues. You have to show that you actually care and you want to do the work. You know, you got a man right now in Congress who is not doing his job. Point blank. Period. He's not doing his job. He's not holding town halls. He's not engaging with his constituents, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're Republican, whether you're independent, moderate, you name it. They call the man no-show Faso, and it sticks. It sticks. So you go out there, you're seen, you're heard, you connect, you talk about the issues, you build, and you give hope. And you, not just hope, a plan, a vision for how we can build opportunity right here on the ground for working and middle-class families. Investment in the future. That's what it's going to take.
Anyone else have a question?
Yes, I have.
I do.
Yes.
Actually, I'd love to answer that as well, if that's okay.
Well, let's get that because I don't feel like people.
Well, sorry, but that was my question. How how are you really going to get these people out?
Yeah.
I mean, whether we deal with Obama or Trump, they got people out who were not even involved in the whole political arena. And I think that's what you're going to have to do, whoever the candidate. I think you're all great, but if people don't vote, then Faso's going to win.
I think it's also...
I'd like to focus that with Aaron because we need to abbreviate the end of this conversation. So, I'm sorry, just one candidate. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think young people. I mean, we saw today how eager young people are to be engaged and be in this process. I think reaching out to young people and making sure that they're coming out. You know, I know that young people are at school and they get really involved, and it's hard to get them to take the time away. We need to make sure that we are reaching them and making sure that they know the dates when they need to show up. So, you know, being really active, like all of you showing up tonight, like this is great. This is what we need. We need everybody to be doing this. So reaching out to people. But, you know, there's also, it's going to be, beating Faso is also going to take reaching out to people on the other side. I grew up in a family that is very politically split. So I have grown up my entire life. Half of my family are Republican. I have grown up sitting across the dinner table debating on issues with Republicans my entire life. So it is something I do every day. So, and you know, as somebody who grew up poor on a farm in a working class family, I paid my way through school. I know what it's like to not have health care. I think that those are things that resonate on both sides, and that those are the type of things that I plan on, you know, reaching out to people on both sides, and I think that that's things that people on both sides can get behind.
Okay, I'm sorry. One more question.
All right. I'm Stephen Taylor. I'm from Stuyvesant. I voted for John Faso. I won't again. I have a character issue. I would like to ask you this character question. In this era of hyper-partisanship, what's your key to finding middle ground with people that don't agree with you?
I think, you know, from looking at the electorate in 2016, I think we need to talk about issues that affect everyday people. And I think the biggest thing on how to find that middle ground is how can you put more money in a person's paycheck, or what can you take off their plate? It comes down to economic issues. I think every day, childcare. I mean, families today are paying so much in childcare. How do they afford to send their kid to college when they're ready? 2, parents working 3, 4, 5 jobs. I mean, that is the top issue every day that people are thinking about, is how do I pay my bills? And I think when we talk about economic issues and how it affects everyday people, we can bring more people together. But I think we have to focus on raising the minimum wage, making childcare more affordable, and making sure that kids can actually afford to get an education. I think these are issues that can bring all people together. I know Pat believes that as well.
What turned you off from John Faso? Tell us. What made you change your vote?
I'd like to restore balance in Congress. I just feel that, at this point, it's just out of control. So honestly, if you breathe and you vote and you live in this area, I will probably vote for somebody, that's Democrat. Not in the primary because I can't, but I will definitely support, candidates. But I'm really interested in somebody going to Congress that can actually work with somebody on the other side of the aisle. And who will do that? Let me know.
We all think John Faso is a bad representative. I should be clear with you. I don't know if you would.
That seems very universal.
Well, right, but
Yeah.
what I should be clear about is that I don't know if you would oppose John Faso if there was a Democrat in the White House right now, or would you still support John Faso?
No.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what I mean to say is,
Just did put him on the
well,
spot.
no, I thought you might have an immediate answer. I mean, I just want to speak to the fact that, to me, I'm against John Faso regardless of whether or not we're in danger of not flipping Congress. We should flip Congress. We have to put a check on the president. But the things that divide us in our country right now, to me, are not Republican-Democrat. They're not even right-left. They're right-wrong. They're people versus the powerful corporate interests that have bought out John Faso and bought out too much of our federal government. And I believe you rally a huge coalition when you speak to policies the people want. And you're going to wind up winning over votes that you never would have dreamed would come to our side when we dare to have that kind of progressive platform.
So I want to talk about values. Some of the things that I don't understand is how the Republican Party has gotten to be the party of values. And I think we've lost a lot of people because of that, independent voters and Christian conservative voters. Now, how Christian conservative can somehow get by what Trump is and what he's done, I don't understand. But what we have to do is reach out to people and find where their values are and reach them there. Now, all the things we're talking about, whether it be Medicare for all, infrastructure with jobs and broadband, education, training, protecting our environment, all those issues are issues that we can reach people on if they can hear us. If they hear that one divisive issue that they stop listening, we don't get there. Well, we can get there. And as an ordained deacon also, I can find different ways to reach people on the level of values and of faith, and of let's make our community a better place to live.
So I would say the word you started off with, character, is critical. It's a sense of feeling respected, having integrity, respecting someone's humanity. I was in Sullivan County, came across a gentleman, a Trump voter. He said, Trump's brought thousands of jobs back to the district. What are you going to do about that? I said, I'm not running against Trump. I'm running against John Faso. He goes, well, what's wrong with him? I said, well, you try to take away thousands of jobs, healthcare from folks, thousands of folks in the district. Really a bad decision, don't you agree? Well, he said to me, a lot of folks with gold teeth and nice cars, they are fraudulently on Medicare. And he baited, okay? Now, there, I could have reacted in any number of ways, but I said to him, let's put that aside for a second, if we may. Answer me this. The folks who legitimately own it, do we take them off? Yes or no? He says, no, of course not. Thank you, sir. I'm glad we're in agreement. We laughed, he went away. 5 minutes later, he taps me on my back, tracks me down, and says, hey man, I like you, you keep fighting. Now, we could have went in any number of directions in that conversation, right? What I had to do in that moment, what we need our political leaders to do right now more than ever is seek common ground. You should lead with that. Seek common ground first. Not just put a flag in your stick and say, here's where I stand, come to me.
You know, it's kind of funny, as over the past decade or so, we've seen the party divide get even wider, right? You know, Democrats retreat into their corner, Republicans retreat into their corner. But at the same time, and we've had a couple of interesting phenomena come up. We had the Bernie Sanders campaign, and we had the Donald Trump campaign, right? We have these campaigns. They, you know, one was Democrat or so whatever, you know, one was Republican or whatever, right? But they managed to reach across, and whether you agreed with either of them, managed to pull a whole swath of folks out there that had never voted and participated before. You know, and again, why is that, right? It's because they were talking about the right issues. We're talking about the fact that we elect and have representatives that are, again, the wealthy, and they represent the wealthy, and they're not looking out for us. They're not looking out for the things that we need to make sure that we're on an equal footing, so we have equal opportunity, right? So that's where we need to go. Is we need to talk about, like, we all have the same anxieties, left or right. Let's make sure we're talking about them, we're actually addressing them. We're not going to defer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, because I think that's actually. Sorry, I think that's the biggest issue we have in our country right now, and I'm not running against Donald Trump. Our issues in this country aren't because of Donald Trump. He's the result, not the cause. The cause is what we've done to the American worker, what we've done to women by paying them a fraction of what they've owed, what we've done to immigrants, how we've continued to marginalize and mistreat the LGBTQ community, how we've continued to leave behind small towns and rural communities. I'm running for those people. And I'm not running against Donald Trump. I'm running to fix the problems that allowed him to get elected, that allowed people that previously voted for Barack Obama to now vote for Donald Trump. That's what my entire campaign is about. And my entire life comes down to getting things done, working with people, whether it was in business or in my activism work. I helped pass a law called the Iran-Libya Sanctions Act, not Invasion Act, where we held Libya accountable for an act of war against the United States. And when we did that, I had to go across the hall from Republicans to Democrats and try to get people to agree. And guess what else I was fighting against? I was fighting against special interests and lobbyists. And when I did that, I learned how to get things done, taking into account, and that's what I'm going to bring to Washington, and that's how we're going to make this country better. Thank you, sir.
So as I mentioned, my family is very politically split. So we have a lot of Republicans, a lot of independents in my family. I've spent my entire life debating political issues. I talk about gun safety with them every day. I talk about healthcare with them every day. We talk about these issues every day. And you know, I think that if you look at it, I want to say that, and every single one of them is very happy that I'm up here running, and every single one of them supports me and wants to see me elected. So then, you know, John Faso, if you look at where he won the northern part, he lost the southern part of this district, he won the northern and western part of this district. I think a lot of rural America, same as this district, feels very disconnected from Democrats, and I think that is something that's really important, is to bridge that gap. You know, I grew up in a poor family. I worked since I was 14 years old, worked my way through college, know what it's like to not have health care. I think that really resonates with a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. And I think that, you know, people want a leader that not just understands what it's like to go through, but has lived those challenges as well themselves. When I go to work, if you disagree with somebody, you're not allowed to just not get something done. You have to get something done. It doesn't matter if you disagree. You have to get you have to get to the goal. So I'm not running because I want to be a politician. I'm running because I want to represent people, and I think that that's the kind of leader people want, not one like John Faso.
Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. We went an hour over, but I still want to invite Shelley Ashkar, and I'm surprised how many people are still. It was a spectacular event. It was
Thank
very. Well, I mean, it was all the speakers, and you guys are great, nitty gritty. This was not an easy thing to do, so I appreciate that. But where's my Shelley?
It's right
there.
Oh, you never said hello. Okay. The whole point of this is we can change the landscape very effectively and tout de suite if we vote. We register to vote, and we've got this tsunami of Puerto Ricans and young people that are going to change the landscape of some solidly red states And this counts a lot, right? This is what we're going to do, right? And I want to invite Shelley to come up, and he's been tireless in his efforts. Do you want?
You want?
You're not allowed to.
So some of you might have heard of New York 19 Votes. We're just over a year old, and it was launched, right after the January 20th inauguration. And it was meant to say we have to take some of this resistance energy and turn it into sort of an electoral army. We have to start getting people thinking now. So before there was even a single one of these candidates announced, we started teaching people to canvass. And on a very cold 12-degree March day, we had 300 people at 12 different sites around the district, and people who had never canvassed before, never hated picking up the phone when a political campaign called. They were out there knocking doors and trying.
Thank you.
And they were sending back the New York 19 Votes hashtag with all the new voters.
I did. I ate the tenders.
Well, people they were speaking to.
Those are
sending those pictures back to Costco. And so the big picture has been teaching people to do these campaign mechanics. Now, many of them have since joined all the different primary campaigns. And so it's fantastic because it's really hard to find good people. But there's still a New York 19 Votes agenda during this primary season, because even though the candidates go out and talk to all kinds of voters, they are very much focused on, Democrats, the kinds of Democrats who vote in primaries. So, New York 19 Votes, we feel that we need to be doing the sort of backroom work of talking to everyone else. So there are NOPs in every town.
What is an NLP?
It's not no official party.
Yeah.
And sometimes they call themselves independents, but NOP is what the Board of Elections calls them.
Independence versus independent.
Exactly, there's that, yes.
You should make that clear.
Okay, yeah, an independent is what someone calls themselves when they say, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. Like independence is a kind of third party that, depending on where you live, has either been taken over by Tea Party types, or it's just a kind of free-for-all, depending on who grabs it. It's very strange how it works. So, for instance, in my town's Democratic Committee, we've decided to kind of ignore the primary, except for having candidate meetings. We're talking to NOPs only through the spring and the summer, because we know our Democrats are going to show in November. And we trust them to go through the decision fatigue of figuring out a candidate, and it's fraught. It is hard. But if we can wake up our NOPs and talk to them at least 7 times between now and the election, we'll have people who say, hey, the Democrats are listening to me. And then when the eventual candidate comes around, they will feel that trust. We'll be ready for them. So I want every town to start, talking to their NOPs, because they're not, they're quiet. They don't know.
Does everybody understand that?
How do you identify the?
The Democrats, yes, we can see the, at least speaking for my own town, we've been getting really good results talking to Democrats because of our local town elections. So they're very good, they feel a lot of electoral power because they won a lot of seats. And they're going to come out again. We could probably talk to them once or twice to sort of get them out. But we need to talk to the NOPs 7 times. We need to really get them, and we need to figure out which ones are progressives, which ones are conservatives, and let them go off on their journey. And I think that's something everyone can do. If you're not sworn to, if you are sworn to a candidate, you should go work for that candidate. And if you do not have a candidate, you should come and work under our agenda. I don't know. Yeah.
So how do you identify those?
The NOP, everyone from a party, including NOP, is found in the voter records. So we just simply look them up and we go knock on their doors. So it's very straightforward. Now the other group that we're trying to also scrape votes out of are second homeowners. So we've, if you are in a town which has a lot of second homeowners, we've created literature and we have the lists of all of them pretty much. You just need to put in the volunteer time. And you know, we scraped like 40 for our 2017 election, and we're about to try and get 400 more in our own town for this election. And there are 15,000, we think, Democrats who are eligible to do this. And these are people who do vote regularly. You just have to get them to do this transition. So that's what we're fighting for. Now, students, you know,
Well, deadlines are important.
I can't pull deadlines out of the top of my head, but
You need to
there's.
be registered to vote regardless of what your status is by June 1st or June 26th primary. It's a completely bizarre, arbitrary.
Yeah. I care more about getting those second homeowners for November, so we have to October for that. Just gather them all. The ones who want the primary. Now for students, you know, I didn't really have any purchase on that. You know, I don't know anyone on the school boards. I don't know anyone. I'm from Queens, and up here, and so there's this firmament of student activity of the Parkland teams leading. It's just amazing. And so today I went out to the Hudson, the walkway over the Hudson, and was carrying this sign that says, "Help us write postcards to young voters." And so what I did was I cut a list within a 10-mile radius of the walkway over the Hudson, young people between 18 and 24 who registered to vote, who did vote in 2016, and who need to be convinced to vote in a midterm. For many, this will be their first midterm. And I asked people on the walkway, mostly young people, to write a letter to exhort these people to come vote. Yes, I'm going to read you a few of them.
Okay.
Like this one's from a 13-year-old. And it's to Taylor Yellen on Rabbit Run Road in Glendale. And it says, "Dear Taylor."
Microphone. We can't hear you.
Sorry. "Dear Taylor, I am 13. Today I'm at the March for Our Lives. Though I'm too young to vote, I'm hoping this November 6th you'll vote for our lives. Thanks, Alexa." Here's another. "I'm writing to you, dear Caitlin, I'm writing to you as a 17-year-old, not yet able to vote. Even for those of age, voter apathy is too present. Voting is an important part of democracy. Please register if you have not already and get out to vote." And finally, "Dear Roberto, my name is May and I'm 17 and I'm voting in November midterms. You should too. The midterms are just as important as the presidential election, so get out and vote." So we got 30 of these on the walkway today. We also got 30 voter registrations. I think I found in the van 300 eligible young people in this category in Hudson alone. So if anyone wants to do a kind of postcard action in your town, talk to us.
Well, Shelley, why are postcards so effective? They are the most effective.
These are, you know, I didn't know much about postcards.
Obama did the stats on that, and a postcard is probably the most effective thing you can actually do for a campaign. A handwritten postcard.
Yeah, I mean, we think it's incredible, and a lot of these kids are just almost too shy to talk to you. Once you give them the postcard and you go away, they will write it. But I mean, I couldn't imagine getting them to come out with me to do any other activity, so this is a great start.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What are you doing specifically in the high schools to register the students who are turning 18 before November?
We're working on that. Harry, get over here. Get down here this moment.
I can talk from here.
Okay.
We're pulling together a lot of strands of different things we could do. The high schools, Johnny tells me, are quite resistant. Not much is happening. There is a mandate that all the county boards have a plan to register students in high schools and colleges and universities. We're going to be trying to get that going. New York City also has something called the Student Voter Registration Day, which is an excellent program. And we're going to try to learn from that and see if we can get something like that implemented here, starting in Columbia County.
How about Dutchess? Is there anything going on in Dutchess?
I don't know what's happening in Dutchess, but I could say that the other thing is we're going to try to find champions in the high schools, superintendents or teachers who have the responsibility to teach civics, to try to be a team to lead the county. I don't know what's happening in Dutchess and Ulster.
I can tell you that in Dutchess and in Ulster County, the League of Women Voters and the Ulster County and Dutchess County Board of Education work with the PIG and ECHO teachers to go in and register voters and do a voter registration day every year in the public schools in both those counties.
One
so
day?
They go in for a day.
So, final word is we have 100 printed registration forms in the back. I'd like you to take one. If you have a niece, a nephew, a neighbor, I'd like you to try and register someone in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys. Great.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Hooray!
I want to thank everybody and the candidates, and this is like an amazing race, and it means a lot. There's a lot at stake, and I think that all the candidates get that in a very, very prescient way. And I just love all of them, but not anyone more than the other. Of course, I'm not endorsing anybody, but I really, big hand, thank you. And thank you all, thank you very much. Thank Cameron Melville.
I do.
I'm going to be like a ninja now. Can I have... Oh.